G'day, folks. AoS Coach here, and we are previewing nothing, actually. This is a brand new concept that I have been trying to do for a while now. It's living in my head, and Elias is going to be helping me with this. I'm really excited because I want to talk about the meta, and how I want to really talk about it is what are we currently seeing? What are the impacts and changes you should possibly think about heading into your next tournament? What are the trends? What are the data that you need to be aware of? If you are seeing something from like a popularity perspective or something that's really powerful, how can you go out and get some repetitions, whether on Tabletop Simulator or your local community, or going to a server like my Discord, looking at like a particular faction that you're not familiar with and maybe familiarizing yourself. And Elias is going to help us. So Elias, top performing player, world championship player, friend of the channel, been on that channel a few times now. And we're going to try to keep this punchy but insightful. So bear with us. It's the first time we're doing this. Telling a data-driven story, especially with the amount of faction and data we have, is going to be challenging. So bear with us. We'll get better, but I hope that we generate enough insight. But Elias, welcome. G'day. Say hello to the people, and then we're going to crack into this.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Aaron/Elias. I go by Elias in real life. Aaron's my first name, but you may know me both. I'm a high-level player. I'm super talkative. I yap a lot. And I'm excited to be on the show. I'm really hoping to help you guys, like some of you players who aren't sure where to start with this new Battlescroll, like where should you start looking. Obviously, we don't know exactly where everything's going to go, but I hope I can provide some insight of like what might be working, what might not be working, what's looking good, what's not looking good, and compare them to the stats and how things are changing and really translate that for all you. So I'm excited for this show and ready to get going on it.
So we should probably bring up and set the scene here. So what we're going to do is we're going to be using AoS events. It is a website that's been created. Shout out to Tomo. It is using data off the back of Best Coast pairing. So we're primarily using it as our data source. However, in future episodes, as we can kind of leverage some of the other TO softwares, we'll see how we can expand upon this. The context here as well is that we're going to be filtering it based off the last 60 days, so the most recent data, and we'll be primarily looking at 5-game or more events. So we won't be really taking in RTTs into consideration because for a number of reasons. There will be some things, obviously, we've got like the Daughters of Cain, we've had Sylvaneth, we've got Lumineth and OBR, and there's been a bunch of factions where the data might not actually align, but as we go through the course of this, we'll pick out some insights and things like that as well. So there should be something for everybody, as well as we'll take a bit of an overview of what's happening in the meta. So that's the context here, and let's crack straight into it.
Jump right in. Yeah.
Let's crack straight in. So when we look at the overall, again, as I said, the top performing factions over the last 60 days, it's probably no surprise that, you can see the Flesh Eater Courts, the Disciples of Tzeentch, Lumineth Realm-Lords, Maggotkin of Nurgle, and Ogres doing incredibly well. I was actually having a look at their win path over the last 3 months, really. Like since January, they've been on a real upward swing from like the low 40s up to now one of the higher winning factions. But what are your first thoughts when you see this, knowing as well Battlescroll, right? Because that's the fun part, is like, yeah, Flesh Eater Courts have a 59%, but we know what's happening now thanks to Battlescroll.
Yeah, so there's some really interesting things here. First of all, the Flesh Eater Courts 59, I think is actually slightly a misrepresentation because the Dragons list was at a global like 72% win rate. It was going crazy, but the rest of it was at a pretty decent spot, like more or less about maybe slightly on the strong end, but not like a problem. So it was like wildly out of control. But everything else is pretty good on it. But that one list was going just nuts. The 3 new books, no surprise that we've all seen these books. They look like really cool. They have all sorts of cool rules, really fun, really interactive, and they just have so many tools. And their win rate's pretty high. But one of the things that I was worried about was actually they're really fun to play with and against. So I was worried they were going to just like gut them, which would suck. And a little bit of a spoiler alert, they did not do that. They decided to buff everybody else instead. So I do expect this to kind of basically everyone's going to raise the water or get close to it. And to be honest, like a 55, 56 isn't that much of a problem to begin with. So I think that gap get closed pretty nicely. And Mawtribes, the other thing is like, yeah, they're just real consistent. They do well. I don't think they're a problem. They're strong, but they're not like a problem strong. But they've been doing pretty good. I'm happy where they're at right now. Although we'll see. We'll talk about them when we get to them. So
Yeah, it's really interesting that you say that, and I think this is where you can't completely freak out when you see like this data in isolation. You're like, "Whoa, Flesh Eater Courts is going crazy," but you're 100% correct. Like, remove the dragon build aside. Like, I've had to play many different Flesh Eater Courts factions, and when you look at your Crypt Guard, your Horrors, your Flayers, like your Morbeg Knights, they're fine. They're actually relatively fine. And when you go to Battlescroll, you'll start to see those are very targeted interventions there.
yeah,
I find this really interesting as well that most people thought Disciples of Tzeentch came out of the gates much stronger than Lumineth Realm-Lords. And people were thinking Lumineth Realm-Lords was the weaker of the two. But here we are very comparable with Lumineth Realm-Lords. Maggotkin of Nurgle now being out now for what, 3-ish months? Three
something
and a
like
half
that.
months?
Yeah, it's been out for a
Yeah.
decent time.
Doing relatively well, to no surprise, super durable. And again, we'll get in more into the weeds of this as we go along, and the Ogor Mawtribes. Maybe quick question though: do
Yeah.
we think? So as we know, OBR recently came out, Docs recently come out, and Sylvaneth just come out. Do you think when we record this next month, we'll see either of them in the top 5?
Yes. So I do think my honest opinion is that Doc is the strongest army in the game right now. My testing against it, reading the rules, it's in a very, very, very good spot. I expect it to be kind of a problem, but not like super dramatically, but I wouldn't be surprised to see like a 56, even with everything else getting buffed up. Sylvaneth, I think, is fine. It's really, really hard to play. It's strong, but it's not like oppressive. I'm not super worried about it. It's like really good, but it's in a purely like super fun, engaging, plays a 5-turn game sort of thing. So I'm like not terribly worried about that one. I think we won't see major problems really from the other ones here. I do think that OBR is very good. I don't. There's like probably some things that I wish had maybe got like some FAQs that didn't in this battle scroll. Like there's a certain Kavalos interaction that's weird, but other than that, I think the army is just like solid. It's got a lot of tools, but it's not oppressive. I don't think, especially with everything else getting lifted up. I think it'll be slightly on the strong end. But
Keep an
not
eye out for OBR though. I will say with OBR, in the first 30 days, we have seen 2 5-0s.
yeah,
So people did underestimate OBR. I copped a little bit of flack on my video, but we've already started to see they've
yeah,
come out the gate a couple of 5-0s. If they keep this trend up, they will be in a top 5, top 6 spot. So
yeah.
don't write them
My
off.
my comment on that is I think what they are is very reflective of the individual player's skill. I think they're gonna have a really equal spread between 1 win, 2 win, 3 win, 4 win, 5 wins, because they're like one of those armies where like if you're really good, that army is incredible. But it's gonna reflect basically your mastery of OBR and of the game. So that's my personal thing. I do think they're strong though. Like I think in the hands of a good player, they're incredible, but they will not carry you through a game on their own back. That's kind of my
And
feeling.
I would say the exact same thing about Doc. You said Doc's going to come out strong, 100%, because you don't have the blood right table that's just automatically ticking. You got to work your ass to get it off. So if
Yeah,
you can do this really well, you are going to be tapping into the blessings. You'll be tapping into the blood rights. You'll be loving life. But if you're not playing into that very well, I can see this being a 2-3 type army,
yeah,
because individually they're not very good, but in the hands of a skilled player, they are going to be an
yeah.
excellent army.
I I may be slightly biased 'cause I know some really good doc players, so I've been getting kicked. But it is skill. It's very hard to play.
But it's a really exciting time as well, because we have had the battle scroll. When you look at the meta as we go right now, I really want to compare both win rates but also popularity rates. And popularity rates is really important. And
Yeah,
I'll reflect on when Scourge of Ghyran came out, for example, and everyone was freaking out about Fire Slayers, just as an example, right? Fire Slayers were really strong with the Magma Droth build, no doubt about it. But then when you look at the representation rate, right now it's 1%. In the past, it hasn't been very, very high. So if you were going into a tournament, you absolutely had to think and prepare what happens if I go into the Magma Droth build. But the likelihood of hitting that Magma Droth player, given that it has a very low representation at a tournament, do you want to build a list to try to start countering a Fire Slayer build when actually we can see here the representation of Stormcast Eternals, Maggotkin of Nurgle, Skaven, Slaves of Darkness, and Blades of Khorne have a much stronger representation at a tournament. So can you handle the Grand Hammer dropping down from the sky? That's much more scary than maybe some of these nuanced builds.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Like, sometimes there'll be really strong armies. I mean, right now, Pirate State isn't doing great, but like, even when they are strong, they're not going to be super popular. And like, it is oftentimes better to practice against the armies that you'll see a lot of, because even if they're not stronger, you have to know how to fight them. Also, like, a thing that I like to think about is like armies that maybe aren't like super, super popular, but decent, but they have like maybe 1 or 2 ways they're played tops, because you can get a lot of valuable practice. Whereas like sometimes, for example, Stormcast has so many units, like it's Stormcast, but there's like 100 ways you could build that. So it's kind of hard to practice against it necessarily. That's just like something you're specifically worried about. So like that's another thing I kind of think about, but popularity is a big deal. I also, I'm kind of a mix between narrative and competitive. I'm very competitive, but I love narrative and I love having fun with my opponent. So I care quite a bit about popularity personally. If it's not popular, I'm always like, or I'm more worried than if it's like not good. Because like people will play bad armies, have a great time if it's fun. If it's like that, it's like, oh, that's more of a warning sign to me sometimes when it's low like that. But yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like when you look at these two charts, and again, I don't want to spend too much time in the weeds. Gloomspite Gitz, for example, a very top represented faction there, 5.1% in the top 10%, or the top 10 over here. But when you compare it to the actual win rate, it's actually got one of the lowest win rates right now. So do I freak out and prepare around Gloomspite Gitz? Yes, I want to know. But if I go into the actual weeds of it all, I probably start seeing some very specific builds, whether it's around Squigs, whether it's around Trogs, a bit of a combination. The same is true actually with, and then kind of contextually, yes, you countered me with my Fire Slayers example, which was an example, but it's now kind of ogres. If you look at the ogre representation, it is one of the lower represented factions at a tournament scene, but certainly one of the highest wins. So do you over-index it? Do you like get some reps to understand it? Do you build your list to counter this, knowing that you might not hit them on your tournament run?
Yeah, it's always a really hard question to answer, and like it depends like your local players and stuff like that. But like for me, one thing I've learned over time is like definitely don't change your army too much to counter one thing. If there's several armies that are doing a similar thing, like ogres oftentimes coming and punching you super hard. And let's say there's like 3 or 4 of the top armies that are like aggressive, high damage, come in, and like Slaves of Darkness can be like that. Khorne can sometimes be like that. Flesh Eater Courts, ogres. That's when you start, like when there's like several top armies, that's when you're like, okay, maybe I have to like really change some of what I'm building here to fight these aggressive armies that are kind of similar. But with one army, I personally wouldn't say don't change your army. Learn how to play against them, but don't really change your army to fight one person. You'll end up regretting it in the other 21 matchups. That'd be my advice for that for sure.
Yeah, I think as we move into the next particular set of data, if there was one lesson here, it would be, for example, making sure that you get exposure to the Disciples of Tzeentch, Lumineth Realm-Lords, and Maggotkin of Nurgle, who both have a good representation rate and performance rate as well. So those 3 alone, I'd be getting my reps in. But then there's some other things, and we'll see how Battlescroll tweaks some of this stuff. And this is kind of a bit of a breakdown. We're not going to get into this because it'll actually be represented as we get into the factions. But this is just a wins distribution list. So looking over the last 60 days, how many 5-0s do we have? How many 4-1s, 3-2s, 2-3s, 1-0, and then 0 wins? So it's really interesting to start seeing where the average is likely sitting around the 3-2, 2-3s. You can see the oranges and the teals. But some of these factions, for example, the Flesh Eater Courts with a high representation of 5 and O's, Cruel Boys getting a couple of 5 and O's, Skaven getting a couple of 5 and O's. Very fascinating.
Yeah. Like, I mean, for me, when I look at a big complicated chart like this, the first thing I'm like, I look at how many 5-0s and how many like 1 or 0 wins is like kind of a good indicator, because it's a lot of information, right? But the first thing I see is like Seraphon, Sons of Behemoth, Fire Slayers, and Nighthaunt and Dog have 0, and that's like an interesting thing, right? It's like that means that even the really, really good players aren't succeeding with them, right? So that, like, if I was going to look at a Battlescroll, that'd be like my first thought is like, okay, they clearly need some help, because sometimes it could be an army that's like maybe an average, not doing that great, but like it's a hard army. Like Sylvaneth sometimes is like that, where you're like, it's really, really hard to play, right? But the good players still get those 5-0s in there. So I'm seeing a couple armies that I was a little worried about coming into this.
The interesting part here as well, and this will actually all make much more sense when we look at it at an individual faction point of view, is Stormcast Eternals, for example, one that always has one of the highest representation rates and popularity at the table. But because you've got so many new players, people middle of the table, and then you've got top performing tables, the numbers are often skewed at a lower win percentage, because you've got a high popularity, people going 1 and 4, 2 and 3s that are actually bringing down. So like, that's why we don't look at data in isolation, and actually there's a lot of great insight, and you've got to be looking at a whole range of data, not just win percentage on its own.
Yeah, directly on the Stormcast, like this is a perfect example. For testing for highly competitive things and my personal like ratings, I had Stormcast before Battlescroll at S tier, one of the top 3 armies for sure. But in the hands of a very, very good player. But like you said, everyone who starts the game, it's really easy to Stormcast in all the beginner boxes. So newer players who are learning the game do drag some stats down like that, for sure. So it's definitely, yeah. The bigger the picture, more data, the better you understand. So yeah.
And maybe you look at it and go, oh yeah, Stormcast at a healthy 51%, but you remove, like, let's say the 2 and 3s out of the mix, and all of a sudden they're in a much higher win percentage. So
Yeah.
I think I've made my point, like just looking at data, not just in isolation, but this will make much more sense where we get into it. But this also is going to be a Battlescroll discussion. So we're going to be weaving in not just the last 60 days worth of data, but also some of the changes that are coming through the Battlescroll, what it might mean for us. First and foremost here, we have the auxiliary one. So the one core change here is when you are having auxiliary units, so each unit after the first that is added to your roster will cost you an extra 20 points, and it's going to accumulate. So perfect example was at this time last year, or maybe it was about 9 months ago, we saw Deathmaster spam. Mason, I'm looking at you here. But there's been a couple of examples. Fire Slayers, Jeremy ran like assassin, like he had 11 assassins at WCW.
It was crazy. Yeah.
I've seen someone use like Cities of Sigmar, like wizards, and having like a whole bunch of wizards and just using the unlimited spells. But like that list now is just going to get more and more and more expensive the more auxiliaries you get.
Yeah.
Do you think this is going to have much of an impact to majority of people?
I would say for the majority of players, not immediately will have a big impact, because I don't think most people are like thinking in those terms of like how to abuse something like that. I think this is a really elegant fix that does prevent the players who do like to find those exploits. It kind of closes those holes. What I hope and believe will happen, though, that will affect everybody, is now that this loophole's kind of gotten closed, a lot of things that were basically nerfed because there were problems when you ran like 20 of them, but they're totally fine with 1, 2, or 3 or so, will probably later on get some buffs, because they're totally fine. Like the assassins, like Deathmasters are totally fine unless you run 20 of them, right? And like those sort of units, they had to get pointed out because it was like, oh man, this is like a problem, but like, how do we balance it with the players who aren't abusing this? And this fixes that hole. So I think moving forward, we might see some units that maybe are like a little overpointed at the moment because of these problems get brought down to where they should be, and you'll see a lot more diversity coming from this rule. I love this change.
The one thought I did have around this is, does this, I know it's already kind of dead and buried, but does this really screw over the Gore Chosen list? Like, because they're mostly like outside of like the abusive little armies. And I have seen people, like I had a Trog list recently where someone just had like nothing but like Trogs out of a regiment. But I was just thinking, like, there is a couple of actual legitimate builds, one being Gore Chosen, where maybe they need to have like a tweak that this is going to remove, like they ignore this particular rule because the army is so built around that.
Yeah, I do think Gorcho's in particular it was just a poorly written thing to begin with, but yeah, that one gets like basically doesn't exist anymore. And then there are some armies that run auxiliaries in a way that I wouldn't necessarily consider abusive. They just really like to run heroes. Like Sylvaneth was a good example of that, where like you'd oftentimes see one or two auxiliaries in them, and like they might suffer a little bit disproportionately, which is kind of unfortunate. But I think it's a much needed rule that will have one or two bad implications, but closes so many other problems that I think it's worth it. But yeah, it does suck if you genuinely just enjoyed like the Khorne AOR, because it is pretty cool. Like I think it's a fun army. So like one thing I can think of off the top of my head is like also the Big Pig AOR can would sometimes run a lot of auxiliary for Iron Jaws, and that's getting severely limited. And there's not a lot of options in that AOR. So
There's a couple of them. I was thinking like Slaves to the Darkness, they have an Exalted build as well. But I think for the vast majority, this has no impact. There's a couple of ones that will get impacted, but you already know who you are. Well, you already know who you are. You caused this. You did this to yourself. The other one here is the tweaks to the manifestation. So you can see Kronspine has gone down, Morbid Conjuration has gone down, and Primal has gone down. Kronspine now costing 0 points. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I like these changes. I honestly kind of feel like all of them should be free, because they were previously having like problems with balance, but they heavily nerfed the ones that were problematic before, and then also made them cost points when they didn't really need to. Like I don't think primal energy is a problem. You know what I mean? Like it's good in the armies it's good in, but like is it better than Kronspine? Is it better than they throw out machineries? Like depends on what your build is, but overall I think they'd probably all be free, it'd be fine. But I do like them having the ability to point them. That is very valuable. But I think I like this change because I sometimes like I want to run Kronspine because I have like some custom models for several of my armies that I made for it because I think it's fun. And then I was like, well, I don't have 20 extra points though, and it's not like it's like even particularly amazing. It's good sometimes, but like I sucked. So I'm glad they changed this.
Yeah, there's been a couple of lists that I've built that have been 2000 on the nose, and I'm like, I don't really want Twilit sorceries. I don't really want Aether Rot. I can't afford anything else. So one, Primal being 10 points is fantastic. Two, Kronspine being 0 just gives me something extra. And even just Morbid coming down from 30. Like, how often was my army going to be 1970? Like, very rarely. It was always like 10 points over, and I couldn't take it. So I think we all agree. Good choices. I don't think anything's too crazy. You probably could, to your point, drop Primal to free.
Forbidden Power is the only one I truly do think needs to cost some points, because when it's good, it's very good. So yeah, but the rest are like great.
Yeah, I agree on that one. So let's get into what we've been promising, which is the factions. So we're going to start off with chaos, then we're going to go into destruction, then death, then order. So we're going to try to keep this at a good pace and just call out the little highlights. And maybe next month we'll go a little bit deeper into some of this stuff, because we do have a lot of changes. First and foremost, Blades of Khorne. So I'm assuming everyone has had a chance to read this by now. As you can see, there is plenty of points adjustments here, but the key tweaks obviously being in the Baleful Lords Army of Renown. One of the things propping up Khorne's win percentage.
Yeah. So sometimes, okay, this is one little gripe. Sometimes with these rules changes, I wish they would tell you what it was before, because you can't go and check. But I did figure out what the it was. Previously you could bring back Scarbrand, and it was a little bit too good. So changing to non-unique for bringing the model back, I think is good, because it without like crushing the army, like slightly tones it down a little bit. I like that change. I think they're all positive changes because I don't necessarily think Baleful Lords was a problem so much as it was just like better than the other options. And it fixed a couple like weird feel bad moments. The other thing that I think is really impactful is I love the soggy Mighty Lord of Khorne. I think it's a really cool model, but it was just crazy overcosted. And there's a couple points things here that I think opens up a lot of build opportunities that were like hitting like 2050 to be what they wanted to be. You know what I mean? Or like there's a lot of lists for Khorne that were like, man, if I could just fit one more unit, this army would work. And I think these points do affect that.
It's interesting, right? Because a Khorne one, people just love running Bloodthirsters. It is chaos version of Suns, and I get it, right? Baleful Lords is strong, and is it strong because it's popular, or is it strong because people just want to run those particular toys? You're right in regards to the soggy Might of Lord of Khorne. It was way overcosted for sillies. But something I find really interesting as well is the blood letters. Now, they have started becoming very popular. They're a very good unit. And you're starting to see this nice little combination happening with Blood Warriors in the Tournament of Skulls. And when you start to look at like how Khorne is going, you're going pretty well. And yes, the Baleful Lords is in here, and you can see that when you start to look at, and like Baleful Lords, I do have within the battle formations just to put it on a page here. But you can see here the Baleful Lords clearly has both a high popularity and a very good win percentage here. You're seeing Khorne overall hitting that 51% kind of win percentage, sitting around, some mostly between 2 wins to 4 wins on average. Lots of really interesting things here. But before I make my call outs, what do you want to say about Khorne?
So yeah, as you can see, like the Baleful Lords has a very high win rate. Part of it is that it is like a little bit simple to play. So like some of those 2-3 players come 3-2s and stuff like that. But it was very strong. And I do think part of that was like every time you bring back a Scarbrand, it was very, very strong. And I think that because he has a 3-6 charge, if you come off the table edge, it's a lot easier to get him back in and fighting right then. Limiting that and limiting some of its anti-magic, I think will help that. I think that like you were talking about the blood letters, I think they were like almost there before. And it was like this feels strong, but like it was like one of those things where like I wish I could just fit like one more thing. One little scouting it to score me an objective while I'm fighting, like a little tiny bit. And I think these points changes do open those up to being like a competitive option. I think overall, actually, though, Khorne has pretty good internal balance, in my personal opinion, from the outside. So, and I think he's getting a little bit better here. And it, every extra unit you fit makes the blood tithe better. So I think these changes have this sort of snowballing effect there.
One of the things that I'd really noticed, like I was looking at some of the more popular picks, and I was like, why are these kind of coming about? Like you look at the formation, so like Baleful Lords aside, you can see Murder Host is definitely one of the stronger picks. And by the way, I have put both in games as well as win percentages, because someone, for example, like Brass Stampede there has a crazy 80% win percentage, but it's got a low sample rate of 8 games, right? So let's like just calm our farms. Maybe it's not as strong as we think it is. It's just in the hands of a really good player, or they had a really good run. But when you look at like outside of Baleful Lords and you look at Murder Host, for example, which is the second most popular, I guess, formation, assuming a Baleful Lords is a formation. Yes, it's an army of renown. Don't at me. You look at Murder Host, then you look at the heroic trait, which is Frenzied Taskmaster. What you're starting to see is you're starting to see a lot of movement shenanigans, and that really plays into combat. Khorne wanting to be in combat, they want to be fast, they want to be really maximizing the board presence and starting to generate their blood tithe points. So I think you like that to me is probably one of the things that stood out the most. And then obviously the Argarth King of Blades always being a popular artifact. It's always been the most popular.
It's just really cool. Like I don't think Argarth is a problem. Sometimes you'll see like these like really extreme, like everyone picks this artifact, but it's not necessarily like a problem. It's just that like removing wards is cool. It fulfills like the gameplay fantasy of Khorne for sure, to have your hero just murk other heroes really well. I like, and it's just like it's useful in every build, so it's not like some of them are like quite good, but they're only good in like certain ways of building your army, right? Like so it's like you'll see. I personally, like, I was building some corn lists like a couple weeks ago just for fun, and I was like, most of these are quite good. You might want to see like some of these potentially cost like 10 or 20 points later, because to like kind of help the internal balance a bit. But I do think like most of these sub factions or formations are like pretty good. I'm surprised the Tournament of Skulls that low, to be honest, because I think it's quite good. But it might have been one of those things, like I was saying, where you just needed like a little bit more wiggle room, and like the list you wanted to build was just passing over 2,000, so you couldn't quite fit it. It might be that. I always thought it was quite good. So it's
I think it'll
interesting.
become more popular with the points discounts. I think now
Yeah,
that you've had a few points discounts, you'll see Tournament of Skulls go a little higher.
yeah,
Also, like, I want to give a shout out to the manifestation law. You would assume Corn would just be judgments every day of the week, but we started to see last battle scroll, not the one happened now, but the one just before it. We see a points discount on the Dark Oath Regiment of Renown. So I guarantee you, one, that'd be 3 blood tithe with those three units that could die for very cheap. That's a very
yeah.
fairly pointed unit. But two, it does allow you to bring in something like Forbidden Power, Primal, and some really interesting pieces there. So
Which is a pretty cool, clever list building. And I love to see that sort of stuff. Like some people feel like, oh, you shouldn't have wizards, but I think it's really cool tech. I don't think it's abusive, but it's really dope, and they do synergize perfectly with corn.
anything else the corn wise? Look, we could obviously talk about all of these factions for a long time, but I'm going to
Yeah,
try to keep pace. I'm going to try to keep pace here. We'll get into maybe a little bit more weeds next month when we don't have battle scroll to consider.
yeah. We can compare and contrast what we thought now versus what might turn out to be in a month, right? So it'd be really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I don't think Corn's win percentage is going to go down. I think what you will see is you'll see maybe some of those net lists get tweaked slightly, and you might see some of these units, like we said, Mighty Lord of
Yeah,
Corn, Soggy, and Bloodletters, and you might see some of those starting to creep in a little more.
yeah.
Zinch, Burning Chariot, and then a whole bunch of changes. Actually, there's actually 2 pages of changes when it comes here. A lot of like tidying up, some tweaks around smoke and mirrors. Anything that you'd want to call out from this?
I mean, I would say basically a lot of these changes have to do with trying some really creative new rules and really interesting ways of mechanics working, and then being just a little fuzzy on certain parts, and like a lot of like, how does this work? And a lot of discussions. So they kind of clarified some things that were clearly intended, but like the wording was just like slightly unclear. So it's mostly quality of life changes. Making things clearer, preventing the arguments or like confusion on what's going on. um, I don't think most of these changes are going to have significant balance impact, because people were mostly playing them as if those were always the case.
Yeah, there was no major nerf. I mean, outside of like the points increase that we just saw there, we saw some tweaks around the spell law. We've seen some just some clarifications to your point. It doesn't feel like there was too much of an impact, but it's much more of a like just clarity and balance perspective. So
Yeah,
um, Zinch, we know, has come out the gates really strongly. And as you can see it here, a 56.6% win rate over the last 60 days. Definitely averaging on, somewhere in the two, three, much more 3 2s. It is much more techie kind of army. So as you get more experience with this particular faction, you will really start to reap the rewards from it. And you can start to see some real trends coming out already immediately, whether it is
yeah.
Mutants and Madness, which is a very good formation, especially with people taking 2, 3 Chaos Spawns of Zinch.
Hmm.
Silver Summoner being the most popular heroic trait, the
Yeah.
Carrick Tome being the most popular artifact. The Zinch Manifestation Law is the clear winner here. But even things like the battle tactic combination, you're seeing Master of Parts and Restless Energy being the most popular and having a very good win percentage. What are your thoughts and what do you want to say on Zinch?
So I think this is very different from corn. What we're seeing here is that like the popularity of certain things is directly tied to win rate, because there is a significant internal balance issue with the Zinch book, especially with like Silver Summer. To me, is like it needs to be changed. I can't remember if it did change the rules for this one. I don't think they fact. I don't
No.
think they did. Because right now Unlike basically every other, I think they didn't change it.
No, I don't think so.
I didn't want to be incorrect and be loudly saying that, and then I've missed it. You can bring back heroes, which every other rule like this doesn't let you do that. It's not once per game. Like if you look like the Slaanesh one, where you're like bring back half of a like keyword locked unit once per game at the cost of CP, and it's still really good. This one is not locked like that. I think it needs to be changed personally. Like points would not be enough. Like you could make this thing cost 50 points, it'd still be the best. It's just kind of like you spend a CP every turn, you bring back a unit. You can use your Lord of Change, bring back a unit each turn, and then you're bringing back spawns for free each turn. So you end up bringing back like 1,000+ points of units, and it's a problem. I also think there's a significant issue with the battle formations where some of them are just way too good. As we can see right here, and then like you can see that curve of win rate, like Masters of Fate having like a 25% win rate and low popularity as compared to these really high up ones. It shows me that there's some issues and to be fixed there. And I'm glad they didn't nerf these new books really hard, because they're giving them a chance for people to learn how to play against them, and they've raised everybody else up. So they will close that gap, and I'm glad they're giving them some space to breathe. But I do expect that this will continue to be the trend for these choices here for the next 3 months, personally.
See, I'm gonna say something, and maybe because I'm a Tzeentch player as well. I don't think mutants and mad things, sorry, is a bad. It's not popular because it's really overpowered. It's popular because without that, if you're playing with the masks and illusion abilities, you're gonna find situations where you can't bring your units on the table as you're doing a bunch of swaps, and you need that way out, especially. Like, yes, you can do other things with the masks by illusion, but to me, it's a real fail safe because as I start losing abilities to swap things, if I have something like blue horrors in the I guess in the illusions that might get stuck, then that whole unit's disappearing. I need an out to be able to bring them on the side. But you are seeing it very aggressively where people are bringing on, let's say, for example, a strong shooting unit, whether it's flamers, whether it is exalted flamer, whether it's Zangor shooting units. Like you are seeing it as like an alpha. Bring them on the side with outside of 9, having range of like 12 inches to shoot and being super aggressive with it.
Yeah, I think I do like it's really good because of that. And from the opponent's perspective, here's my kind of beef with it. What it does is it removes counterplay from the opponent. You get a really, really strong ability with Tzeentch, where you could like swap your units, and now it's super powerful. And normally the opponent then has a way to punish you if you're not really careful, you make a mistake, or they make a really smart play and they lock that thing in the sky. It feels really good. I think like they got you throughout your cool abilities. They found a way through your holes. And my kind of beef with it a little bit is that it takes away your opponent's one way of interacting with that rule in most cases. Some armies can interact with it, but when you're playing an army that doesn't have tools to fight Tzeentch, it can feel very like, well, nothing I do matters. Which is a kind of that's more than the win rate. That's kind of my problem with some of these things, and I would hope they would like kind of fix it. So there's like, because Silver Summoner also does a similar thing where like, oh, but I can just go up and kill him, right? And then you're like, but he brings back a unit every turn, and so becomes now doesn't feel as good, right? And that's more my beef than the win rate with it. In the matches we have tools, it's fine though. But yeah, anyway.
It has feelings of the KO before the movement shenanigans. Remember, you could redeploy, then the boat does the thing. It has shades of that where it's like some armies just don't have the tools to be able to respond to it, and it's like, why bother?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
I empathize with what you're saying. I can see that. What I'm saying is like that unit rule isn't strong on its own, but maybe your points increase on some of the units to tone them down a little bit. Like, for example, the Chaos Spawn of Tzeentch is a unit that comes back unlimited, basically, and you are seeing people take 2 to 3. Maybe it's just a little too cheap.
It's a little too, there's a lot of units that feel like, because you have so many tools, you should also be very vulnerable, right? Like if you look like Idoneth, for example, it's like that. Like your units cost a lot because you have all these really cool tools, and you want it to really be punished if you mess up. And right here, they're just a little bit too efficient. They get a couple too many units, and all of a sudden these rules go from like really like knife's edge to being a little too forgiving, and you have these sort of problems. I do think their win rate will drop a bit because everything else is getting bumped, but I do hope that some of these get changed in the next battle scroll. But at the same time, also glad you're giving them breathing room to see what happens when everyone else gets lifted. So
And that's probably a good call out as well. A lot of armies did get lifted as well. And we are in the cusp of a new General's Handbook. So,
yeah,
if we go back to end of season 3, which was like Primal Dice on Magic, then like, oh my gosh, Zinch is off the charts. But what if
yeah,
it's, I don't know, artillery focused, or we go back to monster heavy, or we go something combat-y, or you know
and
what I mean? So
the soggy war scrolls, like I think the Spawn are crazy, but the other really abusive unit is actually Kyric Acolytes from the Soggy War Scroll. Interact with the new rules in a way the other ones didn't, and the rare ones are totally fine. But those will be rotating in like 3 months, so they no longer exist. So like some of the problems that Zinch is having are just going to naturally go away, and which is going to be kind of nice.
I think the thing here, though, is that Zinch is popular, Zinch is strong. So go out and get some reps, go get some experience against the teleporting mask by illusion shenanigans, because you are likely going to face it at an event.
Yeah, and your win rate can jump a lot by knowing how Zinch works. By the way, against it, it is a significant upgrade if you know how it works. Your chances like triple. So
Yeah,
it's definitely worth
get
testing.
get a couple of reps in, and it starts to become a whole lot clearer. It's a very techy little build. Another one, another quality of life here. Just Hedonites of Slaanesh, no major rule changes, but majority of points discounts across the board, other than the Twin Souls.
Yeah,
This is probably going to get somebody an extra unit.
yeah, it's a significant amount of points changes. And it does add up to a good amount. I think it might be enough to open up demon builds. The real problem that they're suffering from, though, is rules issues. I like these points changes, though. I like the Twin Souls went up just a little bit. Everything else went down, which I'm glad, because some people might have needed to raise a bunch of stuff up, and it's really just like one unit. But like some of these do need some like the formations. Like none of them really work with demons. So I was hoping for a little bit more dramatic drop on like Shalaxi. I do play Slaanesh, by the way. It's one of my 4 armies I have. But I do think mixed arm builds with these changes, like mixed between demons and mortals, got to be a very real contender. I don't think pure demons is necessarily good still, but mixed arms I think is, and the mortals in general, those two both got lifted up substantially. So like mortals was like the only way to play them for a long time right now, and everything else is down here. And now I think mixed arms and mortals went like that. So it definitely opened up a large portion of the book, and I think people will be having a lot more fun because they have more tools, because things are now appropriately costed, and you're rewarded for investing into these synergies a little more.
Maybe my prediction is you will start to see more of the mask and more bliss barb seekers. If I think about list building and changes, I can see some characters being swapped out to get the mask, and I can see a return to bliss barb seekers. So
Yeah,
yeah, it was only 10 points, but I think it was enough, especially when you're reinforcing the unit.
yeah.
Uh, I could see them returning to form.
Yeah, I actually don't think they needed to reduce Bliss Barb Seekers personally. I think they were already very good. Um, so I was a little bit surprised to see that. Also, like Lord of Pain, I also thought was totally fine. But I'm really the mask is a unit I love. I have like one that I like add a bunch of custom stuff, and I've got like this piece of silk wrapped around her and stuff like that. I never play her because she's cool. It was just like 130 points for this like little tiny fragile model. Was like I just can't quite do that. But then like Sagi Celeste was like, oh man, I really like this. But this every time I build a list, it'd be like 2040, 2050. And I'm like, ah. So we'll see.
I'm glad you said that, because I was also going to call out, I think Celeste is a sleeper unit, one that has probably been in lots of lists. Then your list is slightly over, and it's one of the first
Yeah.
things that gets dropped out. I could see Celeste also coming back into form as well. So Where is Slaanesh currently sitting? You're sitting at a 48.2%. Definitely much more of a variable between a 1 and 4 and a 3 and 2 kind of army. A few 4 and 1s creeping in and 1 5 and 0 creeping in. Again, you're starting to see things like Invaders is definitely the most popular battle formation. You're seeing Celebrity Warlord is the clear winner when it comes to your heroic traits. Your artifacts is definitely a bit more split between the voice box and the pendant of Slaanesh. Really, really interesting as well. And then you've got Master the Paths and Restless Energy being the most popular battle tactic combination, but also Intercept and Recover and Master not far behind it. What are your initial call outs here when you look at Slaanesh?
Yeah, so Invaders and Secret Cavalcade were basically the only ways to actually play them competitively before. I don't necessarily know if that changes, but the units that you can bring in those does change. They have a problem where like their initial book sub formations were just like not really working, like they just don't really work. So it's not so much their problem as much as the other ones just don't work. Like I think they're actually kind of fine as they are. Celebrity Warlord is like the Silver Summoner, but I think a balanced version of it. I personally like all of the heroic traits almost, if like one of them. I think they're all really good. I think Celebrity Warlord is not a problem. It's just like it's always pretty good. It's just popular. It's not like it's like everyone likes it. It's forgiving. It's kind of fun. It's kind of cool, as opposed to it being like a huge power spike. I think it's very well balanced, and I don't think they need to change it. That's kind of my real, and all the artifacts are good, and Slaanesh is quite flexible with battle tactics. I think like you can really do almost any of them depending on how you build. So,
Do you think the win percentage is going to change given we saw a bunch of points discounts? Are we going to see much tweaks to look? There was a lot of points discounts on minor heroes, so Celebrity Warlord probably still remains a popular choice here. Your Invaders, when you look at your Sabarite infantry, yes, your Twin Souls went up, but
yeah. So I
you
think
still
you'll
want to keep them, right?
yeah, you almost definitely, but like the great thing about Twin Souls is like people were running like units of 10 of them, multiple units of 10. They were great as 5-mans, so they can go back to what they really should have been, which is like a utility unit, I think, in many lists. I think you'll see more very heroic traits now that Keeper's gotten a little bit gotten cheap enough to like it starts to be make like fit better. So you'll see some of these more combat oriented builds. My hot take is I actually think Slash's win rate is going to drop. And the reason for that is that a lot of things did drop. People are going to try out a bunch of builds that are quite technically difficult to play, unforgiving, and everything. A lot of other things got buffed as well. And in many ways, Slash is waiting for a book because a lot of its rules don't work super great. But what I do think will also happen is that people will have a lot more fun playing Slash now. They have more options, and it'll be more exciting. So I think its win rate might drop a little bit because everything else also went up, and I don't think they didn't get up in a way that makes them necessarily more competitive, just way better internal balance, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. It's an army that has probably gotten away by people not knowing what it does, not in a bad gotcha way kind of feel, but obviously it got a lot of attention from world championships. People are now getting more exposure to it. It's still a very good army, but you're right. There's been no rules adjustments. You will get either an extra hero, an extra unit, or allow you to take a different, more powerful unit that you've always wanted to have in the list.
Yeah.
So I probably either would say it's going to stick to its rough win percentage, or it may drop slightly. I don't think dramatically,
Not
but
dramatic.
I can see it potentially. But to your point, it doesn't have a battle tome, so
Yeah.
on the trend of the current battle tomes,
That's like a good thing at this point where you're seeing these new is like that's exciting, right? I'm super hyped for when it comes out because I think it'll be really dope. So
yeah, I don't when I look at this dashboard, I don't see too much changing. Like again, the hero traits, the battle formations, your artifacts of power, your manifestations. Like I think everything's relatively consistent for the next 3 months.
yeah, I agree.
Unless like cities, obviously, unless cities comes out and we get a Cog Ford and
And
Cog
all
Ford
this,
works great, and I
yeah,
can bring I can bring Demon X and the Demon X and the in Rapturous in a and a cog fort.
Yeah, like there's always that like weird thing where like, oh, this synergy works like crazy, But I think we're on a similar page about where it's at. Unless something crazy happens.
Nothing bad, but they're also, I don't think they're going to change too much. However, this one is one of my favorites, and I know Elias, you've been joining into the
Yeah.
Trough meta. Certainly interesting for me. I found that it has added an extra 50, 60 odd points. And I think for me, it's been most impactful to swap my swords back to spears. I did initially have spears, and I found myself a little too over points. And also the soggy ward despot as well coming down as well. Having some discussions with others, I think the Infernal Razors need more than points love. I think the unit, it has potential, but given the short range of the shooting, it's just not good. And the Dominator engines are decent, but for the points, I'm always going to take my my Bull Centaurs, unfortunately, where they don't do enough damage to have them. Like, they kind of like, I'm not a huge fan of the Dominator engine. Like, yes, they're a tanky little
Yeah.
save thing, but they don't do nearly as much damage as I need to be. I'm like, I'd rather cohort, or I'd rather Bull Centaurs.
Yeah, I'm on a different page about the individual units, but the core of what you're saying, I mostly agree with. I do think that like some of these points weren't necessarily the issues with a lot of these units, and that's the problem. And like it was a first, that's the very first version of the book, and I think there's some things like that just don't quite flow right. It's a little clunky, a little awkward. I personally think the Dominator engines are dope and pretty good, but the way I play the game, they work well for me, and most other players haven't been liking them that much. I just have a weird play style. That's how I am. But everything else, I very much agree with what you're saying on that. I did want to highlight Anointed Sentinels at 130 is crazy.
I did
That's
want to say that
exciting.
too. Yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting at 130, and it's worth testing, at least on TTS. I don't know if I want to go out and buy 6 Anointed Sentinels, but at 130,
Yeah.
very close to the cohort prices, that's not bad.
It's not bad. Even just as 3-mans are pretty interesting, just to run around and give you a little bit of mobility. They can fight smaller fights for you because sometimes with Chorvs, you're like, man, I really don't want to send all this at this little chaff unit, and like you're slow and you get to commit to stuff. So having some units to just run around and fight small fights, that alone is going to help, I think.
I could see, like my play styles, I usually have 2 units of Hobgrots on the flanks, and they go out and try to survive as long as they can, tagging terrain features and desolating them. I wonder, with the speed of these anointeds, if I was to find some extra points, having 2 units of anointeds rather than 2 units of Hobgrots. Yes, they don't get the pre-game move, but I have much more speed. Does it help me get battle tactics? Does it help me get more desolation early?
Plus, you could assassinate heroes and stuff with them a lot better, right? You can do like cool little plays. So I think it opens up some tools. I think that's the most significant change of these.
Yeah, and look, they're in a really interesting spot, the old Helsmiths. They are averaging, as you can see, 2 wins out of 5. And, there's a couple little things here. One, it is a new book syndrome, and it's a brand new faction. So it's unlike a new book, and people have some experience running the faction. This is a whole new different faction, and there's a whole bunch of teething problems. I think it's been a whole bunch of like acquiring thing problems, like Bull Centaurs have been out of stock for certain ranges. People have been running their FOMO boxes and trying to make certain units work. But to no surprise, we're seeing things like an eye for weakness. Like, it's clearly the number one heroic trait. When you look at some of the artifacts of power, the scroll of petrification is the number one. And then what's really interesting is you start to see the soggy industrial polluters that's really started to. It's really interesting. When the book very first dropped, I was a big fan of Demon Smith Cabal. Then soggy War Scrolls came out, and industrial polluters become popular. So they're the 2 normal builds. But then the Grand Forge Host is a really viable army of renown, and one that's actually gaining not just a lot of popularity, but also a lot of success. Not crazy success, but very good success.
Yeah. So I think this the battle formations is actually where I really truly think the problem with Hellsmiths lies. in terms of balance, because like most of them are just like, I think they wrote the book like, okay, if you have 3, you get this benefit, but like it's really hard to get 3 onto something, and they don't do anything unless you have 3. And I'm hoping there's like an equivalent to Sahi sort of something that and this next GHB where they like back and change some of those, and all of a sudden I think that breathes so much new life into Helsmiths. I definitely agree, like there's a collection issue, new book, learning how it works, etc. I personally don't necessarily think the artifacts and heroic traits are quite as dramatically like this is like a really extreme, and I was a little bit surprised to see that, because I actually personally feel like most of them are quite viable. Like I usually play with Serval Automaton. That's like my favorite, personally,
But
and
you're
it has
running
a high win rate if you
but
look
you're
at it.
running the dominant. But you're running the domination engines, right?
Yeah, but like even when I'm just running one, I just have like the mace one, and I kind of use it as this like deterrent. If you're gonna come into my shooting, I have this strike first mace guy, and I can throw some demonic power points on him, and like if you come over here, he's gonna hit you first, and he's gonna hit you hard. So it gives you this like space to breathe. That's how I see it. And like I think Fiery Worms, I think is not that great, just because of the way that it like one shot on blunderbusses. If there were 2 shots, yeah, sure, you could you could do it, but it doesn't quite work. But I think most of the artifacts are, I mean, School of Petrification is for sure the best, for sure. But the other ones have their spots.
I think what's really interesting is when you compare what you just said to the key units at the bottom. The Dominator engines are not on the top 10 units being picked, right? You got Oryctar, you got the rocket battery, you've got your cohorts, you've got your cannon, you've got your bull centaurs, your Ashen Eldar, you've got like everything that's being picked. Most people aren't going into the Dominator engines, but given that you've now seen some points discounts because they were very close to the bull centaurs.
Yeah.
And like when you're pound for pound bull centaurs versus
Yeah.
Dominator engine, it's bull centaurs every day of the week.
I
But
think
now
that
that
was
the
the
points are
issue.
going down,
Yeah, they become way more interesting, right? And also, I think really importantly, Primal Energy also went down 10. And Primal Energy is incredible with the Minotaurs. I call them Minotaurs, but they really like because they went down 20 and that also went down 10, and you're healing with they have 2+ saves. You're healing D3 plus some potentially, and you also have Life Swarm hanging around healing them as well. They become really hard to take down. And they're pretty efficient now. They were just a little bit inefficient. I do really like them. Dominator engines are really cool because like you don't necessarily have to throw demonic power onto the flamethrower ones to have them do what they want to do. You can mostly ignore them, but they were just kind of inefficient. The mace one needs 3 to do its job, or at least 2. But they can pretty much function autonomously because they're automatons. So I think you will see them. I think it was just that thing of like bull centaurs are definitely very good, and if they're the same price, you just end up I'll take the centaurs. But it wasn't that big of a gap in my opinion, and they're just different units. And now that they're cheaper, I think you'll see a lot more of them.
yeah, I've said in every discussion about them so far, it's been a points problem because they were just too comparable. But Forbidden Power, as you can see, one of the clear favorites. Although I'm surprised Aetherrod's the #1 manifestation law, given if you've got Bull Centaurs, Forbidden Power is such a great delivery mechanism. Put 2 or 3 DPPs on those Bull Centaurs, and you've got a 6-inch charge
Yeah.
once you teleport them, right? So it's a really good delivery memechanism.
I think Aether would see, well, one costs 0, but also if you have cogs, you have the re-rolling charges that can work during your opponent's turn, and you have now the Anointed Sentinels are so cheap. If you pump them up and have them within 12, it's +3 to charge on the counter charge, strikes versus counter charge, re-rolling. That becomes like a serious threat at that point. So it's pretty cool. You might actually see this trend kind of continue to a degree.
Yeah, I might have to play around with it. I've always
fun.
been a fan of Breach. Yeah, that's good. No, look, I think for Helsmiths, we'll probably start seeing an extra unit, or at least getting more of the units that they want in the book. I found points problems at times, but I don't see this spiking too heavily.
I think you'll see a lot of list diversity improvement. I don't think you'll see a significant change in win rate. I think because everything else is also getting lifted, so they would be about the same, but you'll see way more variance in what people are doing.
100% agree. And what you said around the battle formations is 100% true. I almost rarely put down 3 on anything outside of the Bull Centaurs when I need to guarantee that charge from bridge. But otherwise, I think there needs to be some changes going into the next season. Speaking of changes, Maggotkin of Nurgle have had a little bit of a points discount as well as a few little tweaks and clarifications really here. Nothing huge, although the Great Unclean One and Festus getting 30-point discounts, I think, is very fair. And then little tweaks here and there, 10 points up, 10 points down, mostly. Anything
Yeah,
you want to call out at this particular point, or we get
I'm,
straight to the dashboard?
I would just say I'm somewhat surprised by these. I did feel some of them I'm like 100% agree with, like Festus, definitely. Grand Cleveland, I also, yeah, 100%. The rest of them I was a little bit surprised to see points decreases because Nurgle feels very strong, and the only unit that I personally thought wasn't particularly good is Plague Bearers. Everything else I thought was like highly competitive. So I was a little bit surprised to see these changes. Also, that Soggy Rodigus didn't change. I thought I was seeing more play than Rodigus. Maybe I was wrong, but then the rules are mostly just clarification. So
Yeah, the rules are much more clarification. I think it's really interesting, especially with the points discounts to your Magath Lords like Bloab, Morbidex, and Horgots, which I think could potentially form quite an interesting list when you combine Festus in the mix as well. So
yeah,
if you're running something like that, that's a big points discount in that little combo there.
my close friend has been running the three of them together, and he did quite well. I mean, he went 3-2, but it was like a very strong 3-2 with it. You know what, like when you like lose two, we got like a 1 point loss twice in a row, but like it felt very strong. It was just that people were like, "Oh, I want to try all the new units. I want to play these big tank balls," but like they were already really good, so I was a little bit surprised to see them drop.
What I will say is Belga and Rodigus both going up is a very targeted specific build because like you don't take Rodigus anymore without Belga. They
Yeah,
seem like a little package. So both of them going up is definitely targeted to one particular
yeah.
type of list.
I definitely felt that Belga was a little too good. Just too much for 120 points. So I think they might end up seeing a few more nerfs next patch, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see how they go. But yeah, right. Like with a very high win percentage right now, they have a lot of great tools. Maggotkin of Nurgle are just doing both well from a popularity and a performance point of view. You're seeing here they're averaging at least three wins. You know, going into fours. You know, 6 5-0s in the last 60 days. So one of the higher ones we've seen so far. Very clearly, Taliban of Nurgle is number one. Very clear, the GIF of Philbro Frenzy is top. Rastfang is definitely a clear winner, although the Wither Stave as well popular, and we can see Aetherorts there as well being a popular pick. So very, very clear domination in
Yeah.
each of these parts of the dashboard.
Yeah. So, like, some thoughts. So, Taliban, a part of it is that it can go into any list. Like, that's part of it. Like, it's good in everything, and it just is really annoying for your opponent. But I'm surprised to see this dramatic, to be honest, because I do think that like Nurgle's Menagerie is quite good. I do think that I can't remember which one's Plague or Affliction. The control score one is quite good as well. I think some of what we're seeing here, the problem is that like Rot Swords and their hero that buffs them are definitely overpowered right now, and they do so much when you're giving them the Febrile Frenzy, Rust Fang. Like they end up hitting way past what they should be hitting with. Like they're just picking up a unit every single turn, and they should not be doing that. So that's kind of what I thought. I was expecting some nerfs to that particular interaction, and that didn't happen. So I'm a little worried about it.
Well, I think we all out of the gate said that rot swords were undercosted. Like you look at Sloven Knights, we were like they are overpriced, and rot swords were underpriced. And you can see here key units: Rodigus, Belgar, Lord of Plagues, rot swords. So they are the clear winner from a book balance point of view. Pop
Yeah,
wretches as well are really, really popular and probably way overshadowing like your Rotmire Creed. Like you're not seeing them really in lists anymore.
yeah, yeah. And I felt like Romark Creed is good. It's just that Pox Wretches fit better, and like part of it is it's just like you'll have exactly 100 points, and you would want to run the blowpipes, but you can't quite fit them. So I don't think they necessarily need to drop in points, but I think the problem's elsewhere. I really was hoping that the support character for the Rot Swords would go up to 130, so he's matching with the other Lord that does a similar role for a different unit. I don't know why he's 100 points. That unit's crazy at 100 points. And so like I'm pretty sure this army is going to maintain its really, really high win rate going forward.
Yeah, I don't see it going down anytime soon. Yes, players will get more experience with this, but I could see some potential points tweaks going into the June battle scroll. So
Yeah.
come out of the blocks really strong. They've held a really strong presence. Let's see how the next couple of months go. You're right. There wasn't really any points discounts. There wasn't there wasn't any like massive points increases. Wasn't any massive rules tweaks. They'll be in a good stead.
Yeah.
The only thing that'll stop them is a drop in popularity or people working out ways to avoid some of the disease mechanics.
Yeah. Also, Dogs of Cain very good into them, so we'll see how that happens.
That might deter them just a
That
little.
might be, somebody's need you need an elf girl to fight these diseased guys. I was gonna make a worse joke, and I was like, I'm gonna pull that back a notch.
Pull back, not on our pilot episode.
Yeah.
Skaven, no major tweaks. Skaven's been around for a long time. One of the first battle tomes in 4th edition. Plenty of discounts here across the board. The Plague Priest on Plague Furnace being the only thing that really went up. Real quality of life kind of tweaks here, right? Like,
yeah, some efficiency stuff. I would have much rather have seen some changes to the Vermin Lords, because I don't think they're necessarily inefficient. They just like the Warbringer, for example. He lets you do all attack or all out defense multiple times in a turn, but he does not make it free. So it's like, do you really have like 3 CP to protect clan rats? Whereas if it was like free and he was even more expensive potentially, it'd be great. Corruptor's like on a really cool war scroll, but he really needs to be priest too. And there's like some stuff like that where I would have rather seen that. These are all positive changes, of course. And I do think you will see like Scryer is looking pretty dope going forward here. It's getting pretty efficient. But I would have liked to see a couple rules tweaks that would like really open it up. But that being said, like Skaven's already actually, in my opinion, pretty darn diverse. Like there's so many ways you can play Skaven. And I think this just makes that better.
yeah, you're gonna see. I do worry when the SOG War Scrolls drop, like the SOG Bell, what that's going to do to Skaven. That right now, this is quality of life. You either will get an extra unit, promotes much more diversity. They're in a really healthy spot, right? They're very quite popular builds, but also they're in that kind of that middle, right? They're 49.5%, averaging somewhere between 2-3 or 3-2 kind of builds. You're seeing people break through with 5 and O's. You're certainly seeing those 1 and 4 and 0 and 5 lists. So it's fair to say they're in a relatively healthy spot. Yes, you can see Fleshmeld Menagerie is definitely quite strong, same as Warp Congregation. Too much words.
Yeah.
Fleshmelder clearly is strong, but at the same time, you can see Scurry Away and Devious Underling as well. So you're not getting as dramatic as what we saw with Nurgle, with just like one absolute rock star. Even the Artifacts of Power, Warpstone Charm and the Foulhide being 2 very popular builds. And the Manifestation Lore is just so great. Like, I want everyone to have a bell, that freaking bell.
Yeah. I think like their popularity of different artifacts and factions has more to do with like certain things are really fun. There's a lot of ways to play them that are on a similar power level. You can kind of see with like where the win rate is compared to popularity that it's not a significant jump. It's in terms of win rate for picking the right sub faction. It's like more or less whatever you prefer. So I think they're already in a kind of good spot, and like these points changes kind of help them keep up with everything else getting decreased. I don't expect significant win rate changes. I do expect to see a lot more Scryer stuff though. You will be seeing a lot more shooting lists, which is going to generate mixed reactions. I like playing against them. I think it's fun. It's very interactive, but some people don't like it. But they're so crazy unreliable that like it's exciting at bare minimum. So
What I don't want to play more into is Doom players.
yeah,
Those little jerks, like
underrated.
they are so cheap and they do so much. The first
So
time
hard.
they went into me, I'm like, they cost you what? And they do this much?
Yeah, I think they're one of the most underplayed units in the army. Oh, it does remind me though of one thing that I was hoping to see changes to that didn't. It's a small thing, but like there's this weird like series of death interactions you can get on the Army of Renown for the Thanquol's Menagerie. That's actually pretty popular. It's like one of the ones that sees play. I think it's like a fine army, but there's some weird interactions that everyone argues about every time it comes up, and I was hoping to see some clarifications on it. Just FAQs, like literally, but like every time someone does it, like, does it work that way, Judge? Like, even though it's like balance wise totally fine and it's a fun and exciting army, I was hoping to see some clarifications to make sure that yes, that is the intent, and I hope they do that next one, just so people stop arguing because it's a fun army. But
And if anyone is interested in Vanquil's mutated menagerie, they've had 40 games in the last 60 days. They're averaging a 56% win rate, 22 wins, 17 losses, and 1 draw. So
yeah,
slightly a little higher. And Vanquil did
that's,
get a points discount as well. So that
yeah.
might kind of feed nicely into this.
Obviously, small sample size. I'm not super worried about the win rate. It's like 40 games, right? But it's a fun army. It's really fun. Bare minimum, like it's pretty competitive. It's not like oppressive, and it's really fun. I do recommend people try it out.
Yeah, and I think especially now with the Brood Terror and the soggy Brood Terror as well, like it's no
Yeah.
surprise Valhide is incredibly popular. Flesh Melder being very popular. Molder does seem like the stronger part of the build right now. But to your point, there's a lot of love going into Scryer right now, where
Mhm.
you might start to see that
See some cool
build.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or mixed between them. We have shooting and monsters. That'd be cool, but hard to do with scaling. But you can make it work.
Or they hold out until a couple of months until the season drops off and all this obscuring disappears. Hopefully,
Yeah. Or
fingers crossed.
changes. Yeah.
Bugger off. Slaves. Slaves are a really interesting spot. Plenty of discounts here. You can see like the Dark Oath War Queen, 80 points. Couldn't believe it when I saw it.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of discounts. Even like Ogor Theridon's going down in points surprised me. And Varangard, I'm sure a lot of you all big cheers. And then funnily enough, the only points increase being the battle formation Champions of Chaos. So that is a massive points hike.
Yeah, I thought that was weird. To me, Champions of Chaos, the problem builds of it were already solved by the auxiliary change. I didn't think this was necessary at all. Um, like it's fine until you're running like 20 of those like foot heroes, and it's like, okay, this stop. But that already got fixed, so I was a little bit surprised to see that. I don't think that was needed. I am one of the most successful Dark Oath players. I love Dark Oath. I have like a hand painted armor. Every single army, every single model has like a kilt that I hand painted. Like, and I have like 120 hand painted marauders. Like I love this army, and I've been asking for this change for a while. It's neither a nerf nor a buff, but it makes it consistent. I actually was hoping that they would change it to actually be worse, which is kind of funny. Because you can currently bring back Wilder Fiends from the edge at full health because of how it's worded, and they should come at least with like half health. Because everything else come out. It's kind of a weird, and every time you do it, people are like, "Let me check that. I don't that shouldn't work that way." So I was hoping they'd fix it. But 1 CP versus a 3-up roll, consistency, having access to your rules makes it just a lot more fun. You get to like, I'm going to save my CP, spend it, get my unit back, steal an objective from you, and be like, and it's a great feeling. And there's been some couple FAQ changes coming up into this, and I do think Dark Oath is solidly competitive. Not a problem, but solidly competitive.
Yeah, I was going to make a very similar point. Actually, we have not discussed this at all in going into this, right? So it's really interesting to hear your thoughts and my thoughts. First off, outside of Dark Oath build, you see the Warriors of Chaos, your Chosen, your Varangard, amazing. Like you could run, I think I worked out you could run Abraxia, 9 Varangard, and Archaon if you wanted to build that like that sort of Swords of Chaos almost style of build. But at the same time, there is no better time to run Dark Oath, between the consistency of this battle formation. You're starting to see some points discounts. And you know what? It's actually quite a solid little build, especially the amount of bodies and chaff you can be putting on the board, then supporting with like your Ogre Theridans or having some Varangard or having some various different things. Got a brand is great value. So if you haven't looked at Dark Oath for a while, because it came out and wasn't that popular at the start. Like I think most people were a bit frustrated. It's getting good success at events.
It's quite good. It is hard to play, and you have to be like a macro player. But if you like it, it's in a good spot right now. If you've been working at it, check it out. It's fine. And I do like they changed the Varangard points. I think it just makes things fit now. Is more so than being like a power spike change. Let's just fit now. And like I think the Army of Renown, it was like this problem where you could either pay like 1760 points or be over by like 30. And it was like, come on, let me play my army. So like you can now play the Army of Renown. And that's big. Because people like it. Like it's fun. So I like most of these changes. I don't like the Champions of Chaos change.
Yeah, look, it's obviously targeting a very specific build because you can see we're at a 47.5% win rate. So a lot of points discounts across the board, very specific, targeted. We talked a little bit earlier about the auxiliary change. So some people building into that type of like all out on exalted heroes and just spamming them. And then also we've seen now the 40-point increase. So very, very targeted. And hopefully, like you can see there, like look at the battle formations, Champions of Chaos, like outside clear winner when it comes to like representation, win percentage, while your God Wrath Warband and your Dark Oath are like struggling behind, but they're actually not too bad. And it's really interesting because, you do see a lot of points discounts across the board. You're averaging a 2-3, 3-2 kind of win. One Mad Chad went 5-0 with them, but they're not an army who's doing incredibly well.
No.
You can see Head of the Unworthy is clearly the number one artifact as well. So like, what do you think is missing here? Like, because there's a lot of like requirements on Bellacore, for example, and
so I think honestly, so I don't think Champions of Chaos was even a problem to begin with. The problem was more they nerfed a lot of ways to play Sins of Darkness out of viability entirely. Like, there was that whole Pokeball strategy with the Gaunt Summoner and the Chosen, which I did just buff. But the game is also accelerated past it, and it's not even as good as it was in the first 3 months of 4th edition. The Chosen needs to drop at least 20. At least, and they're top 10. And this is like an army that has a 47% win rate, very high number of players who love this army, and there's only 1-5-0. And like it's suffering, and I don't think they needed to nerf Champions of Chaos. I think they needed to improve some synergies between other builds in the army. It's not so much that Champions of Chaos was the problem, it's that the other things weren't quite working. And they did fix some of those. So I do think that like the Varangard builds now actually fitting and not having these really awkward points will make an impact on this. And Dark Oath, I do think is in a perfectly like 50% win rate, perfect balance. But I was hoping to see a little bit more love for like the Chosen. The Warriors did go down 10, but and that they're fine at that point total. But some of the other stuff I think could have done with a little bit more dramatic improvements. You used to see like essentially zero play and have seen like zero play for like 2 years, and they dropped them by 10 points, so I think they could have done a little bit more here than they did, but there's some builds that are now good that were not, so that is definitely an improvement.
I was just having a look at the mad lad who went the 5-0, and shout out to Tyler Emerson of Warhammer Weekly fame going 5-0 at Hog Pit GT in March. Abraxia, Chosen, Chaos Lord on Karkadrak, Deathmonger, Dark Oath Savages, Mindstealer, Chaos Sorcerer Lord with Head of the Unworthy, Chaos Warriors reinforced with Dread Banner, Ogroid Myrmidon, and reinforced Theridans. So
Interesting.
Interesting
And that's
list,
like,
yeah.
and that
Yeah.
almost every unit in that went down in points.
Yeah.
So
Been everything.
yeah, he must have played really well, and it sounds like a nice flexible list. So
Tyler showing us the way.
yeah,
So super interesting. I'll be curious to see, but you're right. Like it feels like they've lost a lot from the early days, and
I'm
let's
actually
see what.
I'm gonna take this opportunity to make an overarching point. Armies like this, fair combat armies, need to be mathematically more efficient than their opponent, and they haven't been. And if all you really want to do with a lot of the builds is come up and punch people really hard, if you don't have the math advantage on your side, you also don't have the tricks. You also don't have the shenanigans. And so points increases can be very impactful for armies like this. And I think if they just decrease them just a little bit more on some of these units, you'd see a lot more excitement from. But the changes were really positive, and the points matter more with slaves than they do in some other armies. So it will make a significant impact, I think.
Which is what we've seen in Chosen and Varangard and even Theridans, like Ogor Theridans. Between those three, we're starting to see an efficiency piece. I don't know if it's enough,
Yeah,
but
that's the question.
like it'll be interesting to see, like, is this enough, or will there need to be some more tweaks going into the June-July battle scroll? But it's going in the right direction.
Yeah.
But let's see. Let's
We'll
see.
see.
Like, is 6 Varangard back on the table? I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing Varangard and Abraxia going down as well.
I think Vanguard will show up.
I think so too. I think they are decently priced now.
Yeah,
They still scare me. They're
scary. They're scary units. So.
It's like I have a PSTD. Like, Varangard.
Yeah. Like I'm fine, and then you get Varangard and tabled in one turn. You're like, you're quarterly Varangard tabling. It's like a medication.
We all have to go through it as a rite of passage. Like this, when your battle tome comes out and it's incredibly strong, you also go through a baptism of fire, which is our first mostly red. By the way, we said we're going to try to do this in 90 minutes, and we're not going to do that. We're going to be closer to a 2-hour mark at this rate.
Yeah.
We'll tighten up for the next episode.
But we made some big overarching points, so we'll be able to move quicker now.
Flesh Eater Courts, look, man, it's a whole bunch of red and mostly targeted one particular build, which has been the dragon build. And to your point, much earlier on, majority of this book is actually quite decent. You know, ghouls, decapitator, courtiers, all receiving discounts. Your flayers, your horrors, your Morbeg knights are all relatively good. Like, they're not great, they're not crap, they're just solid. And they have not been touched here. But what is very clear is your Ghoul King on Terrorgeist, your Ghoul King on Zombie Dragon. But more than just that, look at the traits that have been smashed, the artifacts that have been smashed. And in fact, I was doing the maths. I think this is the first faction that has artifacts that are all cost points.
Yeah.
Like everyone normally has like 1 or 2 outliers, and there's usually a free one. But all 3 of these cost points.
Yeah, which is interesting because it's like that's not a great look.
There's no free choice. There's no free choice. Like, if you're at 2K, there is no free choice. There's no free universal choice or anything. Like, you're just going out there with no artifact, no trait, no something.
Yeah. There was actually also some interesting stuff. So I personally thought that like Revered Monstrosity probably could have done with a more significant point increase than that, but some of these artifacts maybe didn't necessarily have to go up. Because they're fine in every build that isn't dragons. But yeah, it's weird. It's a weird spot to be in.
And then you see the spike, right? Royal Menagerie, which is very focused on this one particular build, is absolutely high win percentage, high representation there. You know, overall, the faction is at 59%. It's relatively popular. If you stripped out this particular build, I think it's a relatively healthy, like 48 to 52 kind of win percentage. It's somewhere in that middle. It's on a good general to be able to perform really well. But you're seeing here that you're averaging, you know, much on a 3-0, 11 5-0s, which is a huge amount in the last 60 days. Channel vestments, clear artifact of choice. A little bit of a mixture here with the heroic traits as well, but very, very clear outliers.
Yeah, you were seeing one build that was like absurdly overpowered, and everyone was playing it, and it was also a fun build. Like, it was even fun to play it against. Even though it was extremely strong, it was a fun army. So it's like when the strongest thing is also exciting and fun, you're gonna see crazy percentages like this. I think that even with all these nerfs, they're still probably gonna have a slightly positive win rate. Even the dragon build, which is the targeted one, I think it will be like over 50 for sure still. But it'll be within a healthy range, I think. I don't think any of these changes are going to push your army to being bad. It may look bad and look all those reds, but I think Feck is still a little bit on the strong end. Not in terms of like overpowered, but like slightly stronger than average and very reflective of play skill. So like if you're really good at Feck, there's so many tools. So it's still very exciting, fulfilling army to play. I don't think that neither nerfs got rid of any fun of the army.
No, and those points increases likely mean that you're losing a unit. You're swapping probably like a Terrorgeist or a Zombie Dragon for Morbeg Knight, a unit of Morbeg Knights or Crypt Guard, or you're going to be putting something else into that slot, and maybe that's enough to bring it back in. Like I played a game recently.
Go on. No, you finish your point, sorry.
I was just going to say, I played a game recently where I had a Star Drake go in, got countercharged by, I think was it a Terrorgeist or a Ghoul King on Terrorgeist, and literally lifted my Star Drake in one combat, and I cried. I went to the corner, cried with some tissues.
And then it's like 100 points less than you, and that was kind of the problem, right? I think with armies like the Dragons build, I think that like losing one dragon matters a lot, because a lot of the time their win rate was really high, but it wasn't. It was one of those things where like most of the dragons would die, they'd table you, and they'd have 2 injured dragons left, and then they'd win. And like losing one dragon completely changes that dynamic, and makes it like, see, now it's like if they go in and it doesn't work super well, they'll lose immediately. So it's like riskier, and like it's a really big balancing thing. Whereas like some armies, they could lose they could get a downgraded unit, and it's like, sure, doesn't really matter that much. I think with dragons, it's impactful. Very valuable.
Well, they trade up so well. Like the cost that they have, what the damage you do if you do the right target prioritization, they trade up really well. And then you'll lose like your most critical things that can take those dragons out, and those limping dragons that going that's left on the table is enough to win the game, because those biggest threats are off the table. But having like some Flayers, some Morbeg Knights, some Crypt Guard or Crypt Ghouls taking that place might give them a little bit more flexibility, a little more gameplay. But yes, obviously losing one dragon as a Feck player is going to suck. You might need to be a little bit more reserved or a little bit more smarter with where you put your dragons into. But Feck doing Feck things. Lots of discounts with Nighthaunt. They are not doing so well. Although shout out to our homies, the Pyre guys, breaking the mold there. They did get a change last Battlescroll. Was it the once per game thing?
Yeah, and they also went up in points last Battlescroll. I think they went before that as well. But I think these changes, sweeping drops, people have not been enjoying Nighthaunt, which I think is more the problem than not being competitive at all. And I think it was just a matter of like, you want to play these units that go in and fight, right? Now, some of the Earth Slaves Darkness, where like if you're a fighting army, you have to be more efficient than your opponent, and they weren't. And so you'd sit there and you'd be like, oh, well, I am a fair fighting army, but I'm mathematically inferior to your army. So the game plan and even the gameplay fantasy of like grinding them down didn't work. And I think when you drop points in armies like this, it does have a significant improvement in the way the game feels for them and their win rate. So I think these will matter.
Yeah. It's really, I find it really difficult to pinpoint what's not going well with Nighthaunt, because is it just that the book was written too early and there was a bit of a playstyle tweak with the rules and how the faction works? Soggy Black Coach came out and it was relatively popular in the early days, and it's kind of dropped off a bit. But if you look at the representation rate, I would have expected a higher popularity rate given how many like cheap Nighthaunt that were out there. But it's just an army that's not playing so well into the season.
Yeah, I think partially it's that, and partially it's just like when you have a unit of like, let's say, 10 banshees or whatever. Not banshees. They're all like 10 ghosts. There's like 3 of the same cost.
Just
You
say
do it at
ghosts.
10 point once, and those 10 ghosts are like, okay, this is a pretty decent war scroll. Oh, there's a lot of stacking buffs I can put on these units. Like I'm seeing what I'm doing here. And then you look or across the table, and someone's got 10 rot swords that cost less with a cheaper support character that outfights you. And you're like, that sucks. But it's not that your ghost unit sucks. It's that your ghost unit shouldn't be more expensive than that unit. And I think that's been the problem. Because like if you look at like Blade Geist Revenants, like that's a good unit. You look at the points, you're like, that's not a good unit. And there's a lot of war scrolls that were like that, where you're like, that is too many points for that unit. And I like this war scroll, but I can't play like a reinforced version of this. That's 420 points, and if someone has like ward removal, that unit is worthless. And you're paying like if this weird particular mechanics, and if someone counters it, it's like pretty bad for you. But then you're not like cheaper because of how bad being countered. It's hard to explain, but like basically they need to be more efficient, so you could come up and like slam 20 ghosts into people, and if they slow and if they guide, you're like, oh, that's not a quarter of my army in points, you know. So I think these points, that was really the problem, is like you wanted to fight these grindy fights with an army that couldn't grind because it couldn't afford to fit all the models that it needed to succeed.
I feel like they made the change as well to be more of a like they did the reverse of OBR, where OBR used to be a castle and they freed them up. They've done the opposite of Nighthaunt, and now it needs to be more castle than ever before. And they're just not getting the success. And I'm just having a look at some of their past stats. Like, yes, they haven't gotten a 5-0 in the last 60 days, but the last 5-0 was around Christmas time. And prior to that, they were doing like 1 or 2 5-0s, between like September to December, like 2 of them on average a month. So we actually saw them doing really well, but they've kind of dropped off the planet since December. And I don't know if it's a combination of the army, like other armies and other battle tomes just doing really well. As you said, there's been a few nerfs in previous battle scrolls that have just kind of always like priced them out of the game. Or just that they're just not playing as well into the season. And people are kind of just giving up on them a little bit.
The season definitely has not been great for their mechanics. It's been pretty tough. Like you're not great at battle tactics for the most part, and the units that were good at battle tactics were highly inefficient.
Mm.
And so you just have like you just lose all your fights if you try and do battle tactics. I think there's like a lot of room in the book to do non-castle builds, but those builds were priced out of viability. And so the only thing you could do was this really slow, grindy castle that sucks at battle tactics and is not everyone's taste either. And it wasn't strong enough to motivate you to do it anyway. So kind of a bunch of things. But I think these points will breathe a lot of new life into the army.
And you just got to look at the unit selection there. Like, look at the top units, right? Like Alinda and the Krulgast being some of the most popular choices. But outside of that, like, there's almost no heroes there. Like, look at it. You've got Blade Geist Revenants, Mirmon Banshees, Pyre Geist, Chain Rasp, Black Coach, Dread Harrows, Chain. Like, there isn't a lot of diversity when it comes to some of the other heroes as well. So there's so much dependency on Alinda and the Cruciator.
Yeah, and because I was trying to build some Nighthaunt lists just out of curiosity, and it was like I was just like, man, this ball, like this buffing unit and the unit it buffs together is so expensive. Like it just doesn't work. You know, you need to be better. And I don't think there's like a lot of bad rules interactions with them. I think they actually have really well done war scrolls and stuff. It's just you can't live the gameplay fantasy with them. And like Ulrach the Drowner, it was like he was a little bit expensive, but also like you couldn't afford to send a unit out of your castle because then your castle falls apart. So you couldn't but like he's really cool and he wasn't bad necessarily, but in context he's bad. So I hope this helps. I hope. It's hard to say for sure though.
Yeah, I don't have that much faith. I think they stay relatively underrepresented and probably not going up much. Sorry, Nighthaunt. I don't know. I don't see enough here in the next couple of months, but who knows? I'm gonna skip kind of this because OBR, you've got a new battle tome. It is very early on. A lot of this is really old data as well, so like there's no real point going into this.
Yeah,
But
and the arm's
maybe,
completely changed. So
yeah. But like, you can see here, prior to the battle tome, you were averaging either 2-3 or 3-2. There was a fundamental shift in how the army's going to operate. I truly do believe, that you are going to find much more creative freedom. Yes, there is some changes in relentless discipline, and I know it's going to be a little harder for you all, but we are seeing some early success out the gate. So I'm looking forward to seeing what this looks like. Hopefully, like this time next month, to see like what's broken through. But
yeah,
5-0 so far.
I'll tell you what I expect. I expect a far more even distribution between 0 and 5 wins across the board. I was the biggest OBR hater forever because to me it was an army that took all skill out of both players' hands, and it's like, I'm gonna walk up the center. Can you beat it? And so it's all 2-3-3-2 forever. And like, I think it'll be way more spread out. Whatever it will be, who knows? But you're gonna see like a lot more diversity in how people score, in my opinion, at bare minimum. I think it's on the strong end.
Yeah, so even just looking at some of the data in the last 14 days, there's been 9 2-3s, 5 3-2s, 1 5-0. So you can kind of see people are trying to work through the new play style, work out what's good, what's not good, working out how to make the most of the faction, and playing around with some of these new units, especially some of these new units that are very interesting. But Michael Rausch doing incredibly well at Adepticon, Paul Hinderman doing incredibly well. Oh, sorry, there's been a few of them who have jumped out
Yeah,
with the new battle tome. So unreserved thoughts. Let's actually see what it looks like. Give it a month or 2 months to see like when the dust settles on.
yeah. We'll swing back and check in on this in a month.
Yeah, let's see how we go. Let's see how our predictions go. But I think you're in an okay spot. This surprised me. I've found every game I've played against into Soulblight. Soulblight has been very competitive, lots of list diversity, and doing relatively well. But there are some big points discounts here, and you can see it from Luca Vi getting a discount, Manny getting a discount, your White King on Steed getting a discount. Yes, your True Blades did go up, no surprise. I was shocked that the Barrow Knights went down. Couldn't
Yeah,
believe it. Like,
I was very surprised by all this too. Like not that there was points decreases, but some of them are pretty dramatic. Like Barrowguard going down 20 felt like that's a lot. That unit was already pretty darn good by my reckoning. Every time I fought it, I was like, that's a scary, hard to fight unit that's pretty efficient. It was slightly overcosted, but like 20 is a lot drop on there, especially when all the support stuff also dropped. Um, I did see that like vampires were just much more popular than the undead stuff. But there's some units that I thought did need points decreases that didn't get them, like skeletons, for example. Like Defo skeletons are terrible. They needed they should be 70 points probably, and they're 90. But then like I didn't really feel like that the Barrow Knights and Barrow Guard needed points decreases. I thought they were perfectly fine.
Barrow Knights especially, like I haven't seen as many Barrow Knights, especially like a reinforced Barrow Knights with a White Lord on Steed, like that is such a tar pit. And like compared to like you don't see zombies and corpse cart really much, as you don't see a lot of skellies, as you've said as well. Which is really interesting that look, one, given that their win percentage is 47.8 right now, it makes sense that they got some points discounts. And you have seen a dominance of Prince Vordry. You have seen a dominance of like Blood Knights and Barrow Knights, and there's been particular list builds. So hopefully this creates a bit more internal balance, and you start to see a little bit more diverse things. But
like everyone that I've talked to, this is like a big thing. So if you look at like Champions of Chaos went up to 40 points because it was popular. Bacchanal Blood remains 0, and it's been this way since the book came out. At this degree of only one faction is ever taken, and they haven't changed any of the other ones in any way, and they haven't raised the points of Bacchanal Blood. And it's just weird to me, like because people are still going to take Bacchanal Blood. They're going to take more skeletons than they take their one vampire. And they're like, it's still better to buff him because these other ones, like, that is a problem. Looking at that, like, and they didn't address it again, and I thought that was strange. The changes to Soulblight I find very weird. Because I also have
Yeah.
found to be quite a competitive army. I do think it is an army that does require a decent amount of skill to operate, period. And I think that has more to do with its win rate than it does. Like, I think it's actually quite competitive army, and the 47.8 has more to do with, like, there's a lot of decisions you're making constantly that you can make the wrong choice on. And it can go bad, but I felt it was quite competitive. So
I will say, like, some of the Prince Vordry shenanigans, I don't know if it's a feel bad. Like, once you've learned how it plays, you can start to play around with it to a degree. But the fact that you've got the 6-inch pile in, which I'm trying to bring up his points to see how much Prince Vordry is. And I can see that they're giving points discount to, like, Manfred, Luca Vi, some of those other vampires to kind of try to bring it up. I'm a little surprised Vordry didn't get hit, even like a 10-point increase. He'd still be
yeah.
worth it. If he went up to 480, he'd still be worth it.
And if Bacchanal Blood went up, it's fundamentally, exactly, like, I feel very similarly about it. I think we're on the same page about it. I do like that some of the skeletal stuff went down. A lot of the changes are just weird to me. I also think, like, a Skirk and Trueblades, they really should have just FAQ'd it or routed it to be once per turn army.
Yeah.
Rather than a point.
Yes.
I don't think it was a points issue. I think it was that you run, like, 3 of them, maybe 4 of them, and you're like, that's kind of abusing a rule as opposed to it being a points issue. So
I actually had that situation happen at a tournament literally recently where there was 2 or 3 units of the True Blades, and I'm like, surely this is a once per army ability, because everyone else something similar has done that.
Yeah,
but no. So
like
I would have
oversight,
assumed.
right? It's weird. And it's another one. My test for those sort of things is every time it comes up, do people go, really? And that means it's probably needs some looking at, even if it's balanced, because it's like every single other rule like that in the game is once per turn army. That's the only one I can think of that isn't.
For the points, though, it's still a great unit. I will find points to keep that unit on the battlefield. No surprise again. Blood Knights, great. Vordry, great. Vargeist. Your Vampire Lord on Nightmare Steed, again, great. So again, a lot of great choices here. I'd be curious to see if those points decreases are going to change the mix. My gut feel is no. I think to your point, there's not a lot of love to zombies or skellies that would make you change the list.
I think Death March will see more play than before, so that's something. I don't think zombies will because Death March is pretty decent on the Barrow Guard and such. So you'll see some of that. I don't think it's going to overtake Bacchanal Blood, but you're not going to see, like, the zombie ones or Legions of Shaiish and stuff like that. Really, there's a lot of things that they could have done they didn't do, and the changes they made are kind of strange. So I think we're on a similar page about this.
Yeah, we are. I think Bacchanal's still going to be just dominant. I don't think I'd walk away from Bacchanal, given there's no points, because regardless if I'm taking Vordry, Manfred, Luca Vi, Vampire Lord on foot, anyone who's a spellcaster, I'm getting that +1 to casting and or +1 to wound in combat. It's such a great utility piece that I probably wouldn't break away from it.
Counterpoint, though, 20 Barrow Guard and a Necromancer combo, like, that pile went down 60 points. And that's a pretty strong thing. So you will see some stuff. But Vampires is probably still better.
But it's charge dependent. That's my problem with the Death March, is that, like, it's charge dependent. So I'd rather the +1 to cast, +1 to wound. You're right. Like, yeah, I think we're on a similar page. Let's see what it looks like next month. I hope we see more, but I because there wasn't the trade off on the other side. I think you stick on Bacchanal every time.
Yeah,
we'll see. We'll see.
We'll see.
Here comes the fun. Here comes the fun. All right, I reckon we start smashing through this. We are going to be here till Christmas. We're going to be here till Christmas 28.
Luckily, the show's small, so
yeah, because we've got order. We still have
order. Okay, we'll start smashing through these. Quick point.
At least we got least we've got Doc and Sylvaneth we can punch through really quickly. Gitz is a really interesting one. Like they were doing so well. WCW having a lot of chariots, squigs. There was a lot of really good stuff, and then the December Battlescroll came in, reined them in. You saw that they still have a really high representation rate, but are not a very strong win percentage. Obviously here quality of life changes, lots of 10s and 20s, and given this faction relies on a lot of reinforced units, you probably do find yourself with a fair amount of like points up your
Yeah.
sleeve.
There's some changes
Uh,
here I don't particularly think were necessary. Like Loom Boss and Mangler Squig was already considered quite good. It already is very good. It didn't really need to go down, in my opinion. So a lot of the other things I do like, the Doom Diver Catapult needed to go down more. It's
yes,
barely played. It's really cool. It's like compared to like a cannon, it's like 110 points. This thing's now only 50 points more. Like it needs to go down
I
more.
I ran 1 and I got frustrated with the inconsistency. I ran 2 and I barely got consistency and couldn't justify the 300 odd points I'm spending on 2 catapults. And I agree with you. Like, I want to see more of those catapults on the table. But I
I,
essentially look at it like you got to, hell, let me have a reinforced unit. Let me take 2 in one drop because
yeah, I
uh,
think they have to drop at least another 20 points, and I think that would actually make a lot of builds open up in Gloomspite. I think if they were good, then like infantry armies make more sense. Trogs get better, like spiders get better. Like notably, they didn't touch spiders at all. I think they're just gonna squat them or something. I don't know,
like,
but like
I I can't believe spiders still exist. I thought spiders would get removed in
me too.
the fourth edition battle
I think
time. Like,
everyone
right, you
thought that. Like
like like you've got orcs and goblins back in fantasy battle. I thought at minimum you'd keep the Arachnarok and just get rid of like spider riders, but here we are. They're still here.
still here.
What's happening with Gitz, right? 43 win percentage, really high representation rate. You can see you've got a bit of a mixed bag, right? People leaning into Squiggerlanch and Trogherd, so a bit of a mix here between people building into the durability and elite of the Trogherd, also the horde damaging potential of the Squiggerlanch. You got Leering Gitz Shield and the Clemmy Cow, both being highly represented. Loon Touch clearly is the number one artifact. The inbound dank manifestations is clearly the manifestation law, and you're averaging a 2-3-3-2, a couple of breakthrough kind of 5 and O's, but for the vast majority, you're in this fat middle, more leaning to 2-3.
Yeah.
How are you feeling?
So I think Trogs are actually very close to good, and these couple small points decreases. It's one of those armies that like if your map gets there, it's pretty darn good. If it doesn't quite get there, you lose a lot more games than it. Like you're actually like they're like they lose a bunch of games by like that much, if that makes sense. So I think that's going to improve a lot. I don't expect a significant change in a lot of these other ones' win rates, to be honest. Because I think like get the like Gittish Tides type stuff really needs those catapults to be like 130, 140, and all of a sudden that army like opens up and it's like this is now cool and does stuff, but it didn't. And I don't think there's also a thing, the Gitz player effect. It's real. All the goofiest players in the game play Gitz, and even when it's really, really, really competitive, the win rate's always pretty low because people love to do goofy stuff as Gitz, and like that's just real. Like we we all know the Gitz player who's like they're just there to just goof off and like make mushroom jokes and like and it's a very common thing. So it is actually a part of it. I don't think they're as bad as their win rate says. I don't think they're super good. I do think these points increases help. I think Trogs in particular enters back into the range of competitive viability because it's one of those things where just the points matter a lot in that sort of list. Squigs are already good in my opinion. They're just high risk. So if you're not really good at like playing them properly, it's really easy to get blown up. And I already felt the Wolves are really good. But they're one of those ones that's like not everyone has the models for to play them. So I think it's kind of more the thing with them. But they're going to get better. Their points dropped a lot. They got points. They got rules nerfed to hell because they were like crazy broken rules, and other points are going down to reflect that. So I think Wolves will see a significant jump.
Yeah, my feeling with Gitz is that they had a very clear play style. People were spamming the heck out of Boingrot Bounders, obviously using some of the movement shenanigans from your chariots and things like that. That got taken away from us in December, January. We were now looking for a new play style. You know, what's going to hit, what's going to be durable, what's going to get us battle tactics. And I think a lot of people have been trying to explore the Battletome, trying to find, like, is it the time for the stabbers and the shooters and just running? I've seen two lists lately where people have just gone like 300 stabbers and shooters, or 200, and just ridiculous numbers you can't chew through, right? If you're looking for damage, you're looking for certain things. I think people are still trying to find the way. And I think with Gitz as well, most players want to play one particular style. I'm all in on Squigs, I'm all in on Trogs, I'm all in on, but actually it's really promoting like a mixed bag. And you're right. I think having some sneaky sufflers along with some Snarlfang riders, along with some Moonclan stabbers, along with some that real soupy build is likely the way forward. I agree. I would love to see that Doom Diver go down a little more. I think it's got an opportunity, but
yeah, it's rough in this GHB to have an artillery piece at 160. You know what I mean? Like, stuff.
without the consistency, right? Like, at least with OBR, when you've got your catapult, it's worth
it. It hits, right? And like, where this one's like, it's like, it just should be a lot cheaper.
Yeah, it whiffs so hard. What doesn't whiff is Iron Jaws. Iron Jaws. I know you're an Iron Jaws man. Plenty of discount here.
Yeah, so Iron Jaws has been basically my main army for like 3 or 4 years. I've played him like a big WoW mix. I also play like other armies pretty successfully, but Iron Jaws is like my thing. These buffs are huge. All of these units I was already seeing competitive success with, except for the Mega Boss on foot and the Hacking Crew. All the rest of these I already felt were good. Soggy Gorgruntas were statistically bad, but I think in the hands of high skill players, they did a specific thing extremely well. I think these key rules updates, that's the big thing. So if you look at these buffs, they used to only last until the end of that turn, and they weren't like, they're good, but like everyone else's combat buffs for the infantry was like until next hero phase, because until your next hero phase, because then you can like get charged and still the benefits. So stuff like Ard Boys was clunky because like I'm playing this defensive strategy, but my buffs don't work when I'm taking the charge. They only work when I'm being aggressive. So all you're seeing was like Kragnos spills basically, because your buffs didn't work the right way. I think every single thing in Iron Jaws is viable now. There's no non-viable units. The worst unit in the army is Zagrok. And I think he's like this far below the rest of the army, and that's just because he's like kind of expensive. It's great, and I'm slightly worried that Iron Jaws might have gotten overbuffed here.
Okay.
That's my worry.
I find what's interesting is Iron Jaws have been so monster heavy in the last 6 months, 9 months even. I feel like I have not seen a brute heavy, Ardboy heavy build in such a long time. Like, I feel like maybe last season there was plenty of Ardboy blocks, brute blocks. Maybe you had a pig or two, but the whole dynamic has completely shifted. It's been all about Kragnos or like double cabbage, triple cabbage, cabbage and pigs. Like, it's just that's been the list, and makes a lot of sense. I think it might be time to, or at least like there's enough incentive here to revisit the brutes and the Ard Boys, and even having like one big block of reinforced units.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like, the win percentage here isn't bad. 49.8%. You're doing relatively well in the middle. I do find the spread, although it says formations, I should actually say win percentage spread. I find it really interesting that, you have a really solid spread of 1-4 to 4-1. Yeah, you got a couple of 5-0s, but you've got a really interesting spread, which kind of then puts it onto the skill of the player rather than a particular list. And then you go to your formations. You've got Gorgrunner Stampede and the Brawl, very similar. You look at your heroic traits, you've got, Hulking, Brute, Big, and you've got a whole bunch of like interesting picks. Although the Amber Bone is definitely like the clear winner.
Yeah, so definitely like Iron Jaws has been one of the, for the last 3 months at least, has been probably the best balanced battle tome in the game in many ways. But the problem, like if you look at these formations and stuff like that, the thing is like a lot of these formations are still basically running pigs. Even like Grunt Stampede, Iron Jaws Brawl is a Kragnos build exclusively. Brute Fist oftentimes still like more pig oriented because it was like
look at the top two units. The top two units right there. Tusk Boss on more Grunter Gougers. Like they're the top two picks in an Iron Jaws right now.
Yeah, and if you were looking at the stats, I bet it's a pretty significant gap before the next couple units. And they were super, super good, but they weren't like problems. Like they were just like a 52% win rate, but they're really fun, really exciting. They do what the army works, and then the rules were clunky for the infantry. So like those buffs didn't work properly. So you're like, well, why would I play these like infantry when like the synergies just don't work? And now the synergies work, which is a pretty significant upgrade. They weren't like weak, but they weren't like strong either. The synergies working was a significant upgrade. And then like Brutes going down 20. Like I currently have been testing with 30 Brutes. And it's been crazy because I can fit 30 Brutes and 6 Ragers and 3 Screening units and 3 Heroes and a Gouger. And I'm like, that's a lot of stuff on the table to then also get these rules updates. So I'm a little bit worried about it, but also at the same time, like realistically, like I have like 4 years of nonstop Iron Jaws play. So I'm like, my experience may not be what other people are experiencing, but at minimum, great time to be an Iron Jaws player. Every single thing's viable.
Yeah, I think much like Suns, much like your Blades of Corn and Gitz, people want to build a certain build, right? Like people don't want to play Iron Jaws to run brutes and Ardboys. They want to run Gore Grunters, Big Pigs, Cabbages. They want to run the big smashy stuff. So there'll still be a subset of people who have a lot of Ardboys and brutes who will get them back on the table. But I can't see too many people who love their pigs going, I'm going to ditch the pigs. Like it's still a good time, still play the pigs, but you might even leave one pig at home to have a block of brutes with an infantry hero or something.
And pigs are still just as good as before. They're still like slightly above average strength. Really fun. They didn't get nerfed at all. Just now everything is at that same level.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great next couple of months for Iron Jaws. I can see this going up to 51, 52, maybe 53.
Maybe 53. I'd probably say close to 53 because not just because of raw power, but also like a smashing army tends to get 3-2s pretty well. So,
and I can see them being a solid little counter to Doc. So I'm going to put this out there.
That's the secret tag. Don't tell anybody.
Well, I'm a Doc player, and that that worries me. Like if I had an Iron Jaws player in front of me, I actually would be genuinely concerned. So, Cruel Boys is a really interesting one. I don't want to spend too much time on Cruel Boys. And the reason I don't want to say this is because, yes, there's a lot of points discounts. But when I look at the previous Battlescroll, I was so confused. Like, why did things either stay the same or go up? I feel like this Battlescroll is just equalizing what they did last Battlescroll. And I don't think there's a huge improvement. It's just where you should have been 6 months ago.
Yeah, they basically undid all the nerfs they did. There's a couple exceptions. I do think monsters are now like Trophy Finger, I think is viable now because it just hit a critical mass of cheapest where like you can play it. But it's gonna be mostly the same. And it's mostly just undoing nerfs that they had previously implemented that were kind of necessary, but they went like 10x harder than they needed to.
Yeah, some of this stuff here, like the Swamp Horde bullies going 30 points, like why?
Yeah.
There's some things here, even like the totem, like it's like they did overswing last time, and when you look at it, like they did an overswing. They were definitely more at the bottom of the win percentage, like 47.8. So they're doing okay, but they're definitely closer to the. And you can look at that distribution there. Lots of 1 and 4s, lots of 2 and 3s, plenty of 3 2s. Very actually no 4 and 1s, and only 2 5-0. So you can see that like there's this big barrier from going up to 3-2 to then actually getting even 4-1. You would assume that you would have a few 4-1s here.
Yeah, I think like they were just in a really bad spot and a really boring spot. More importantly, like you were just locked into doing this same build. Like every single build was exactly the same. I don't think it'll be true anymore. So that's kind of exciting, and I think you will see more 4-1s and improvements, but not going to be overpowered. I don't think.
Yeah. It's really interesting that Swamp Horde Bullies is still like the most dominant of the choices. And you look at the win percentage there, it's actually quite a low win percentage. So the fact that it's dropped 30 points, it won't obviously change the battle formation selection, but maybe you'll have enough points to do something. Obviously, between the totem, between some of the other choices, like I can see, Mork's Eye Pebble and the Swamp Staff costing you. So like, there's enough cumulative points here to either get something else or to upgrade something into something better.
I do think the Army Renown gets viable now, and Trophy Finger gets viable now. So we might see people move a little bit off Swamp Horde Bullies because there's other things that like actually work that were previously just overcosted out of playing. And I think you'll see the win rate jump up, and I think it will have a lot more fun. And that's I don't think it's going to jump off like massive, but you might be up by a couple points and more diversity and more fun.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if like the win percentage is gonna go up dramatically because so many armies went up as like got discounts. I can see the quality of life and the quality of your enjoyment of your game is gonna go up.
Yeah,
I can
definitely.
see that happening. I think you're gonna have a fun 3 months, and yes, it might be worth exploring the Army of Renowned, but I can't see this like hugely changing your
No.
world.
It's not going to be like a 55 or something like that.
No,
Maybe a 40,
gosh,
maybe
no.
49. Like,
Gosh, no. Gosh, no.
This
Ogres.
on the other hand, I'm worried about this one. I'm not gonna lie, this is looking pretty spooky.
I was like, what? Like when I first saw this, I'm like, right, okay, you got two sides. You got dad bods who are doing incredibly well. Like, yes, they're in the top 5, and then you have like your BCR who really don't see the table very much. And I think Beastclaw Raiders have lost a lot of their identity. They don't hit as hard as Iron Jaws. They don't have the objective control as well as Suns. Like they're not. They like, who are they and what do they do? And you've seen them really drop off from the ogres, and like you could see it, like discounts to Stonehorns and Thunder Tusk to all the varieties, right?
Yeah.
But then you see Iron Guts get a discount.
20
Then,
points.
then you see like the soggy Iron Blaster get a discount,
Which you're
and
seeing a lot of play. Yeah.
yeah,
Exactly.
and
That's why I'm like, that's interesting.
I don't know. Is this like the final hoorah before like they bring out new ogres? Like who knows when that's coming? Like is that 3 months, 6 months, 12
Who
months? But
knows?
like this is interesting.
I think this is going to be enough that the Stonehorn builds go back to viability. They're currently doing quite poorly, but this is substantial buffs to them, and I think it brings them up to viability. So going from like a 40 to a 50 is like that's a 10-point win rate increase, but I don't think they're going to necessarily be like a problem, except for people who get got by them. But but I am like I don't think that they needed this many sweeping points drops is more my thing about it, because like there's the units that we're seeing heavy play and have a very good win rate that got noticeable points drops like 20 or more, like, and Iron Guts have been considered kind of bad for a while, but not because they're bad, they're just a little bit worse than Gluttons, and dropping 40 points for a reinforced unit is like pretty substantial. So I'm a little worried about this one. I think this is an army to keep your eye open for, and a lot of people have ogres on their shelves. I've noticed, like almost everyone seems to have an ogre army for whatever reason. So I think you might see a big jump in play.
Yeah, look, I don't have an ogre army, but this would probably be a really good time to pick them up because if you break off, like if you look at like the top units, right? Iron Blaster just got a discount. Iron Guts just got a discount. What else did we see? Noblars go down as well. Soggy Nob. Oh, that was the scrap launcher. Sorry, it was a Noblar scrap launchers. Frostlord on Stonehorn went down. Like you're gonna
Huskard
have
dropped by 30. Like, yeah, it's like all these units were seeing significant play. Yeah, it's pretty big. So
I don't know if the points discounts are enough to see the return of the all in on Beast Claw Raiders. Remember, you used to see like used to see Mournfang Pack and Beast Riders and a couple of two Stonehorns and a Thunder Tusk, and I don't see that type of list coming back. But I can see them being added to an army full of like gluttons and iron guts and
yeah,
cannons and
just slotting
like
in
yeah.
elegantly, because like sometimes Ogres has a problem with being like clunky big point units. So if you have like a little thing, you can just slot into a thing. Yeah, it at bare minimum it'll be good for diversity. I hope it doesn't end up being as potent as I'm worried it might be. I think that we could see some crazy spikes, but we'll see how that goes. But I'm a little worried, and you're a little bit more on the it'll be fine sort of energy on that.
No, I'm the opposite. Like what you said about Iron Jaws, I feel about ogres. Like if people have like if people are what you said is true, which is everyone has an ogres army, if this shoots up in popularity, I think there could be a real momentum swing to this particular army and it being a top 3. I think right now it's in the hands of niche players that are very good extracting the value. I think it's definitely a sleeper army, and these points discounts are only going to help.
Yeah, those good ogre players are going to be a menace in the next 3 months.
But would I run the old like 3rd edition all in on Beast Claw Raiders? Probably not. It's still about gluttons. It's still about iron guts. It's still about the iron blaster. It's still about the butcher.
Because of the auxiliary nerfs, I agree with you. Otherwise, you could run like 9 Huskards. But luckily, the auxiliary changes saved us from that nightmare situation.
Please don't. No, just play Big Pigs in Iron Jaws if you want to play that.
Yeah.
I might take the lead on this one,
Yeah.
since it's one of my favorites. This is great. Great quality of life. I think the only thing here is like the soggy Kraken Eater. It didn't really land. I still think it's a War Scroll issue that everyone else is all on like anti-infantry, anti-terrain, anti-monster, just stuff them in the bag. Like that's the Kraken Eater has lost so much love when it hasn't been able to kick objectives and change the value and all the thing, right? Quality of life on the mob, quality of life on the Gatebreaker, quality of life on King Broad. A lot of good quality of life stuff here. It's just good. But to what you were saying about Nighthaunt, it's all around like the battle tactics. Like that's what makes this particular season hard for Suns.
Yeah, I think like more than anything, Suns needs its book. I think it's an army that can be really dope. It's just that like some of the things are a little clunky, and you can't realistically change all those things with like patches like this. Like when the book comes out, I'm sure it's gonna be dope. The points help, but it's just a hard army to adjust because you have so few units, right? So.
And what's really interesting is there's probably no other army that relies on armies of renown as much, so regiments of renown as Suns. Like if you look at the history, it's been all in on the Gitz one to get some wizard casting. It's been a big fan of the Piggies. It's been a big fan of many of the different regiments of renown. But overall, Suns just do what Suns do really well. They smash, they sit on objectives, and you can sit here. It is mostly a 2-3-3-2 army, a couple of breakaway 4-1s, a couple of 1 and 4s. That's often when you just get clogged up, tied off an objective, you lose a bunch of bodies. Maybe you have you use your man crushers as shields where actually they're really valuable. And look, at no surprise, Take a Tribe is very popular, Furious Temper very popular, Extra Callous Feet very popular. And even if you look at like the distribution of battle tactics as well, like it's all in basically on intercept and recover and restless energy, because it doesn't play very it doesn't play very well in the others.
You could potentially do Wrathful, but like that's not really where you want to play them anyway. So one little thing, I do think like the Ogreoid Regiment of Renown does do a lot for them, and people should try that out a little bit to kind of help with it. And I do think these points decreases could end up with some cool builds. Hopefully that we see them. Like I think you can put a good amount of babies and some bigs in a build, and it fits better now. So hopefully that like breathes a little bit of life into them while we're waiting for the book to show up.
And it also does allow you to play a lot more with Kragnos and King Brod. Often you found that having one would price you out of the other because they're so expensive. But now you'll find that you could even run Kragnos, King Brod, and 1 or 2 megas and some mobs. So
That's pretty cool.
I think
Yeah.
I think I worked it out. You can do Brod, Kragnos, and 2 of the cheap megas for a 2K list. Like you could run 2 Beast Smashers or 2 Kraken
That's
Eaters.
actually pretty
So
exciting. That's I didn't do all the math. That's awesome. That's actually pretty exciting. I think people are gonna like that. That's a big up for Suns for sure.
yes, yeah, or it'll allow you to take like an extra man crusher on foot, or not a mob. They're all on foot. They don't fly or anything. But like they're doing well. I think I think just Sun's doing Sun stuff.
Yeah.
Furious Temper's still very good. I wouldn't change any of this. It makes complete sense. I'm sorry, soggy Kraken Eater. I don't think you're going to be.
It was
there.
just a miss. It was a miss, unfortunately.
It's good in theory, like being able to like deep strike, 9 inches from the board edge. Like in theory, it sounds good. And then like if you have Kragnos near you, then you do a 3d6 charge. Like in theory, there's actually something there.
I wish it wasn't once per army, because then you could have like 4 of them off the table. That should be at least funny. The bare minimum. But yeah, it in theory, and then you play practice and you have like 4 models, and you can't afford to not have one on the table.
And none
it's
of
like,
them on objectives. And
yeah, it's just like awkward. Good idea that just didn't quite work.
yeah, we'll see what they do. But like Suns will do Suns things. I don't think those maybe the points points increase. I don't know. I don't think this win is going to change. I don't. I could see it dropping slightly. I could see it increasing slightly, but I think they're in a good spot. They just like it's all down to you and your skill expression, or how good you are sitting on circles.
All right, now we got order. Time to get these engines running so we can jump through these, because there's a lot of order armies.
Yeah, there is. Well, we got 2 that we can basically skip because we've got new battle tomes, right? And technically, we can always skip cities because cities, as we know, will be the next battle tome. We've got cog forts and grenaders and Galiants, or.
And to be honest, I don't think any of these change the way that you're currently playing cities, unfortunately. Not in a massive way, at least. Wildercore Hunters, being the exception, I think are very, very good. And I do think Steel Helms are good, but people won't do them. So
I think Cavaliers, though, as well. I think Cavaliers getting a points discount, it is fun. I think it's still a good little choice. Talia, I want to see more on the table. I do wonder, and I don't want to create fear or anything. I don't have the battle tome. I don't know. But like, I wonder if this is the final run for the Dreadlord on Black Dragon, the Free Guild Marshal on Griffin. I wonder if some of those old Empire Dark Elf dwarfs are on their final run. So make the most of them. The Battle Mage on Griffin, I feel like that also might be on its death's door, given we've got a new thing. So
I would probably assume that's the case, but even though I love the Griffins, I think the Griffins still look great, but the Dreadlord is like, that model does not. There's a lot of that sort of stuff going on. So Sue's in a weird spot.
Yeah, look, cities are in a decent spot, as you can see here. The Cavaliers, they're very much getting over the veteran cannoneers. We have had some tweaks on the Great Cannon and that whole little setup piece with the Pope and some of the shenanigans. Like, I'm not going to read too much into this. This is how it currently stands. So do look at this, have the final run, knowing a battle tome's probably going to drop in the next month or 2.
Yeah,
it's probably going to It's probably going to fundamentally shift. Like, you're probably not going to have a steam tank anymore. You're probably not going to have a bunch of the old models, but getting a whole bunch of new things. Look at the data. Look at the data for your final run, but know the new battle tome's on its way, right? So,
yeah,
good.
Not much to say about it right now.
No, but at least positively, right? When you look at some of those key units, right, majority of them are brand new models. It's the Cavalier, your Warhawk, your Great Cannon, your Marshal Cavalier, your Command Corp, your Relic Envoy, your Fusiliers, Talia, Callus and Toll. They're all the brand new models, so you'll keep running them as long as they keep being good.
Yeah. And it's
Yay,
cool.
cities. I can't wait to talk about like what the new book looks like in
Me too.
Cogforts.
It seems really dope, though.
I can't wait to see Cogfort meta. All right, Doc. Again, no point talking about Doc because Doc has got a whole new battle tome. It is currently averaging like a 2 and 3-3-2, but I think we both agree this is going to fundamentally shift. They are in a very good spot. I think you're going to start seeing. Yeah. Let's see what this looks
fun,
like.
very exciting, very strong. I think things look really good for Doc, and they're one of those strong armies that's very fun to play against as well. So I don't think they're fun as an opponent, even very much so. So
I think you're going to see Marathi return to fame. I think you're going to see double, if not triple cauldron lists. You're going to see snakes back on the table. You're going to see witch elves back on the table. We're going to have these new blood hags. I think you're going to see a lot of interesting list diversity. I think off the gates, it's going to come out with a average win percentage, probably similar to this, if not slightly better. But I think it's going to ramp pretty hard going up into June. I think you're going to see as soon as people work out the blood rights and the blessings, you're going to see it, it's going to be a top army.
yeah, definitely. Completely agree with all that.
Yeah. Fire Slayers, interesting spot. We did see some tweaks in the last battle scroll to that specific Magmadroth build, and to no surprise, we're starting to see some discounts to our foot idiots. There are rumors of Dwarf and what that looks like, so who knows what it's going to look like. But you know what? Honestly, mate, I would probably just keep running soggy Fire Slayers for the next couple of months. Like, just ride it out into the sunset, and I'll go back to my foot idiots in June, July.
Yeah, and I don't think that those changes really make the foot idiots become like something scary. They're better than they were, but I'm not seeing that this is like fundamentally fixing the problem.
I think what I will say though is maybe you have, like, because the last battle scroll did kind of force you to drop one of your droths, and maybe there is now a much more balanced approach where you've got 2 or 3 droths, and it's like a 50-50 or a 60-40 split of like 60% of your points into droths, 40% into your troops, and maybe you've got a little bit more of a mixed bag than what we had, which was like 5 droths, double sun, kind of builds.
Yeah. And Auric Hearthguard, I think the shooty guys, they
the
20, and they might be good. It's very hard to assess that unit. I read it, I have no idea if that's enough or not. It's really hard to assess that particular unit, but Fire Slayers plays will know, and I do think a 20-point decrease from 130 to 110 on them is meaningful. I read them, I'm like, I have no idea if this is good or not. It's hard to look at. No one I know has played them in the entirety of 4th against me with the shooting ones. So I don't know. It's hard to say for me.
I think it's a play style. I think people just want to ride into the sunset, enjoy droths while they're strong, and let's just revisit this book in June, July.
Yeah, agreed.
IDK, we've had a new battle tome that's kind of settled in. Not new, it's newish, but it's kind of settled now, and there's a lot of green here on the table. Your Thralls, your Reavers, a lot of your heroes, whether it's your Oracle, your Achillean King. There's a lot of discounts here. Only one going up is the Icon. Mostly because, go on.
Yeah, so I was like number 1 ITC as Idoneth for 2 years in a row up until this last year. I used to play them a lot. I haven't been liking them in 4th edition for a variety of reasons. These buffs are exactly in the right direction, but there's some things, like it's a weirdly balanced tome right now. The soggy formation for sharks is like insane, but sharks are also absolute garbage. So you're like the soggy formation is worth like 400 points, and then you're overpriced by 400 points on these sharks, and so you can't play sharks in anything but that sub faction. They could be blank war scrolls and they'd still be good in that sub faction, but that sub faction is 20 points instead of 400. And then like Achillean Beastmasters is similar, right? Like the army does not function without one of those 2 sub factions. If you try to play anything else, doesn't work at all. Like, does not work. and it's very frustrating. The thralls, like, points can't fix thralls, unfortunately, and I am like a thrall lover. I qualified for and played in the first World Championships of Warhammer playing 60 thralls, and I have them painted and everything, and the war scrolls don't work. And the Soggy war scroll was a cool idea, but they only have 2 attacks, 3s and 4s, rend 1, damage 1. You just don't do anything. And the rules are cool, but they're suffering from this problem that can't really be fixed by points, and I didn't see any fixes to the core problems. I do think that Achillean Beastmaster builds got better, and now it should be closer to a 50% win rate, whereas they're at like a 44-ish before, and it should be closer to a 50% win rate, and that is substantial. If you like Achillean Beastmasters, they are now closer to as good as the Sharks are. And you wouldn't be like feeling like you're making a mistake by not playing Sharks. So that's meaningful. I don't think the infantry builds are actually viable, but they're getting this like crazy cheap point where you have so many models, but it's like, that doesn't feel very Idoneth-y. I don't expect people to play that a lot.
It's interesting you say that, because when I look at like the points discounts and where you got, look, you're currently okay, like 47.9 win percentage right now. So you're okay. The points discount on a cavalry build, I don't think is going to be enough to be able to do anything with it unless you fundamentally shift like your Eidolon from one to another. But like you'll get some discounts here and there, but like it's not enough to do anything with it.
Yeah. And like, so the points are going the right direction, but not enough. So like, for example, Volturnos was 230, went to 210. That guy should maybe be 190. The Storm went from 320 to 300 to 280. He should probably be about 260. And in any other army he would be. So you're facing some of these like problems where like you're trying to play this like fairer gameplay with Achillean Beastmasters, and the math just doesn't. The points are too high still. The army's cool, but I don't think it's really working. And I think another part of it that isn't really shown here, but like the popularity compared to the win rate. So for a while, actually, the win rate has been like 55-ish and then it kind of went like weirdly, but and the popularity was like 1%, and isn't 55% win rate because it was Sharks, and it's like you just don't play the game with your opponent, and your opponent hates you, and you hate your opponent. It's like it's not fun, and that's kind of the problem. I think that Soggy stuff could breathe like an equivalent in XGHB, and some changes to that could breathe a whole lot of life into it. And I do think it got better. I just don't think you're going to see like, the Eels build still kind of like, unless everything lines up right, you kind of just bounce off your opponent and die. Even when you're like, yeah, being all smart and clever, and I get in, like, and I have 2 attacks, so, but there's a lot of cool stuff that could be good. And I think they just started so wildly mispointed that they keep getting closer, and they're still not there after like a bunch of battle scrolls, but they're getting very close now where you can start to see something.
But I don't want this just to be like the wholesale discount army, right? Like this is a cool army that should be appointed appropriately with cool rules.
Yeah.
And I feel like, with the battle tome, it did lose some cool rules, and it's dependent on certain heroes to do some of these cool rules. So I don't know. I feel like there might be some rules tweaks more than like points discounts, because I don't
very much agree.
like, I'd rather the Leviathan be 500 points, but make it worth 500. Don't just keep bringing it down.
Its aura being like 6 inches is like, that's not really how this army works. The fast mobile army, and you're like, oh, make a 6-inch castle. And you're like, that's annoying. And then like Thralls having 2 attacks when like you're supposed to be your damage unit, and you're like 2 damage 1 attacks. Like there's no amount of points that makes that do what it's supposed to. Morrsar are very similar, where it's like, that's great and all, but you have 2 attacks and you win on 4s. Like, I'd rather them be 30, 40 points more and have an extra attack and like win on 3s, or extra rend and extra attack, like, and then it'd feel correct and that fragile glass cannon sort of thing. Whereas right now it's just like you're like a glass bucket of sludge. You're not really even like cannoning people. Like, it's just not. It doesn't feel very good. That's why I
You're
haven't
a
been playing them.
wet bucket of plankton. Yeah, I've seen a lot of frustration from IDK players and not getting the value that they used to get from, Volturnus charging in with a bunch of eels and doing a bunch of damage and mortals here and teleport shenanigans here. So
Yeah.
I don't see this number changing very much. Maybe it slightly decreases, but I think the IDK build looks the same unless you want to go all in on thralls, and I just don't know how many players want to be running mass thralls. I feel like
It's
that's just like
extremely niche. It's like me and like one other person who does that ever. And
people don't get into IDK because IDK for thralls, they get in for monsters and sea
yeah,
creatures and cool stuff. KO discounts here on the board.
surprised me.
This one really surprised me because KO hasn't been doing too bad. Like they're sitting at a 50% win percentage. They're sitting in a nice little healthy 2-3 to 4-1 kind of meta. You can see there their battle formations are relatively good with both good win percentages and good representation. Shrewd Opportunist clearly is the number one pick. Celestian Burst Grenade clearly the number one pick here. Good mixture of battle tactics as well, but it's much more of a popularity issue where people aren't wanting to run KO. Last Battlescroll, we did see a whole bunch of units go to once per army abilities, which I think did hurt them a little bit. You were seeing people running multiple units of certain units. Now they've had to like spread it out. It's an interesting one.
Yeah, I was surprised to see just sweeping points decreases. And oftentimes it's on a lot of units that I already would have considered on the upper end of power level in the book. And I think their win rate is a little bit misleading. I think they're stronger than that. But there's certain maps that they specifically really struggle on, more so that so it's like there's always like one map in a battle pack where they just really, really have a hard time. And that kind of, but like the power level is quite high. That's why you see like a lot of 4-1s, and they have like it's kind of a shark drop off. It's hard to get 5-0s, but like they're at a pretty strong power level. There's a lot of 3-2s. There's not a lot of low winning players, even though they're hard to play because their power level's there. So I'm a little bit surprised. I think like at the high elo type gameplay, I think KO is a menace. It's very, very powerful. Their winner is a little bit held down because if you make a couple mistakes as a beginner, you could instantly lose the game. But if you don't make those like big mistakes, it's a pretty strong army. So I was a little bit surprised to see those. I do think it lines up very well into several of the new armies as well. So I'm expecting some good win rates coming out of KO here.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is that the popular units like your Skywater and your Von Grims, they weren't touched. Like, your combination of the Admiral and the Ironclad is a little cheaper. Like, the armies start running a few little gun haulers here and there. Like, you haven't really seen gun haulers very much. You run like, a frigate and an Ironclad or like some type of combination of balloon boys. So, like, I don't see this changing too much. But maybe you do see some different like
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know. I
it's
don't see this changing too much.
not too much to me, and I was already seeing about a 50-50 balance of people playing the frigates versus the ironclad builds already. And the ironclad build definitely lost more points, but when I was looking at the stats last, they're about equal to each other in terms of power level. So I was a little bit yeah, it's just surprising. I mean, it's certainly not bad. If you're a KO player, you know, you're in a good spot. I don't think they're going to be like oppressive.
The points discounts are only like 10, other than like the Etheric Navigator, they're only 10 points for those unit drops. So it's not like there's big wholesale changes that let you do something, right? Unless your list was at 1990 or 2000 and you wanted to have one unit and now this lets you have another unit, it shouldn't fundamentally shift other than like maybe the gun hauler if somebody wants a gun hauler. It's not a bad unit at 150, but I
Yeah,
don't know. I feel like these are pretty
I
settled.
have fought gunhauler spam before, and it is actually quite good. It's very, very annoying as an opponent. So, but that's gonna be like one person, two people maybe bring it. So I'm not worried about it. Like who has like 10 gun haulers.
Just want to run like their Sky Wardens, Engine
Yeah,
Riggers, Von
and
Rims. They want to.
it's fun to see niche. Like I don't think it's so powerful as to be oppressive. So it's like it's fun to see those cool builds from time to time. So I think this opens that back up.
I wouldn't mind 1 or 2 gun hauler builds, just not
Yeah,
lots of you. Just
yeah.
not lots of you. Lumineth, you're doing well. Top 5. Light of Lotharian, Shock and Horror went up 10 points. Probably could go up a little more, to be honest. It's a
That unit's
pretty
crazy.
solid unit. But at the same time, I thought some units could have gone down in points. Lots of rules clarifications and
Honestly, okay. So I've been, for one, I'm training my partner to play Lumineth, and she's been doing it, and I've also been learning them at the same time for that reason and playing them. I think that most of Lumineth is totally fine. Like I think it's very close to perfectly balanced for most of Lumineth. Some of the things require, like when you get got by them, you're like, ooh, but like everything has counterplay. It's one of those things where like as you learn the book as an opponent, it gets like, okay, I have like they have all these choices and they're very complex, but once you start to understand them, you also get to interact with them. And most units are pretty well balanced. There's like a couple things that I thought were like that I think are a little Altharion, everyone is aware of. I really was hoping they would make his ability cost a CP to use, because points almost don't matter for a unit like that. Like if you would have 20 points more from this, you'd still bring him in every list. It's not really an efficiency question with a unit like that. It's more just like that tool is so strong that I was hoping they would make it cost a CP, so it has a cost benefit rather than making him go up in points. Their army just ends up being tiny, because that's like kind of a not great feeling for the Lumineth player. I'm a little worried about Wind Chargers also being so cheap. But the rest of the army I think is like great. Like it's not oppressive in my opinion, at least from my perspective, and I think it's really fun for both players. And it's just Light of Altharion and a couple units that were like only like one unit being too cheap in my opinion.
I think with this one, you've got the new book syndrome. So I'll be curious to revisit this in the coming months to see, because like when Helsmiths very first came out, like you've got players trying to work it out. Some players like, not that I gotcha, but like, I don't know how to handle this army, right? You've got Disciples of Tzeentch who are doing very, very well. People are still trying to work it out. You've got Lumineth Realm-Lords, people still trying to work it out. I agree with you. I thought of Disciples of Tzeentch versus LRL. LRL was a much more balanced, friendly book. There was much more strong builds out of Disciples of Tzeentch. I'd be surprised if it maintains this 55% win percentage. I can see it dropping slightly as opponents get more educated, but I don't think it's so bad. Like the fact that it's got so many 4-1s kind of worries me a little bit. But then at the same time, is this a gatekeeper army where, it might necessarily get to the 5-0? Mind you, there is still 6 5-0s there. But is it one of those gatekeeper armies like KO was many, many years ago? Or is it going to get even better as LRL players really start to make the most of the rune system and get smarter with that? I'll be curious on this one.
Yeah. I'm curious to see it too. I do think actually one of the things that does beat Luminous sometimes is raw stats. They're like, I'm doing all these things. You're like, yeah, so here's just a wall of meat. And a lot of things dropping in points a lot does help in that matchup quite a bit, because they're pretty good at assassinating a unit a turn. But when you have like an extra unit or two, it does change the feeling of the matchup. So I think we'll see it. I don't think it's definitely going to raise from here. But I don't think it's going to go below 50 either.
No, I mean, you know what? Maybe something like the what is it? Is it the Acolyte of Runes? I could see something like that getting a small points added to it, being able to like add extra rune abilities, given that's like the strength of the army. But in saying that, I don't know. I'm not so worried about this one.
Yeah.
Yet.
Give it 3 months, let a new GHB come out. Let's see how people react to it, because I do think there's a lot of counterplay in this army.
Yeah.
And it's hard as the opponent to learn that counterplay, but there is a lot of it there.
Something that people wish they had some counterplay to is Seraphon. And by counterplay, I mean points discounts. And Seraphon is a funny little faction. I'm like, what is going on here with Seraphon? It feels like you've gone all in on some cheeky spam, like your Hunters of Hawachi, your stupid what are they called? The little fast cavalry. Oh,
The
what are they
skinks.
called?
Yeah, I know exactly.
Yeah, like
I forgot the name,
like
but yes,
like
they're
it feels like you were just relying on so many tricks for such a long time. Like it's been so rare that I've seen agrodons and like steggies and carnosaurs and like it's been very much proxed up by like croxigores and like
yeah.
crow.
I think like some of the war scrolls are quite bad, and need to drop so many points. I do think that like dinos at the amount of points drops that a dinosaur list just went down is a lot. Like you're saving like 200 points in some cases. Um, so that's pretty significant. I do think these points changes help a lot of things. I don't think they're gonna raise that much in win rate though, in my personal opinion. Um, just more things will be it'll go up a little bit, but um, like dinosaurs, I think is exciting though, and I think the rest of it is like hovering the same, similar, maybe slightly better win rate.
I think what you said about Hedonites of Slaanesh, I feel the same about Seraphon. They need a book. Yes, you can point them down to oblivion and basically everything's free, but I feel like there's a fundamental shift for Seraphon needed at like a core rules level, much more than just pointing them down because they're not overpriced. It's just that they just don't do what you want them to do.
Yeah, yeah. Like there's a couple units though that did go down to points that do have decent war scrolls, like the Ankylodons. I forgot the name, actual Bastillodons. Like they went down and they're not bad war scrolls. They do what they want to do. So like you got some stuff, and it'll help tide you over till when the book comes out at least. Like, well, it's not they're gonna feel better than they did before. I think before it was pretty awful to play. Now I think it's like it's more exciting now, but it's definitely a hold you over till the book eventually comes out type thing.
Well, the last comment I want to make before we quickly move on to Stormcast is I want to know what the spawn of Chotek has done to require an increase in points. Like, how did you go? I don't think I've ever seen a spawn of Chotek.
One guy brought like 15 to a tournament and did well, but I think it's just like people don't know how to handle 15 of something. Like they're fine. I've always thought they're kind of decently good. I was surprised if people don't play them more, but like I don't know
Yeah,
about points increase, and also with the auxiliary changes, like it's
yeah,
fine. Like
correct.
they're like,
Why?
well, screw that dinosaur in particular for no reason, but
Yeah, like I felt dumb. I feel like it Disney. And I look forward to Soggy, and hopefully they get a new battle tome earlier than some of the others. They definitely do feel like they need it. And I do love seeing Seraphon on the table. Technically, our last faction, because Sylvaneth is going to be a quick skip with their brand new tome, is Stormcast. And whoa, whoa, wee wah. Is there some points discounts? Did I love that Drakespawn Templar discount? Seeing Indrasa, your Fulminators going down, Prime going down. I can't believe Prime's 150 now. No surprise, your
yeah.
Questor Soulspawn went up. Your Chariot at 110 is dirt cheap. Your Stormstrike Paladors, my God, like beautiful model, never seen a table. Give it a Vanguard, give it the
Keyword.
Vanguard rules, not the Warrior Chamber rules, and I think you got a different unit.
There's a lot of stuff like that. Like you said in Stormcast, that would do a lot more for them than points does. They're a little bit annoying how they're like sectioned out a book when there's not even like real reasons to make it that. Like all the stuff actually only work with one type. Like all the rules only work with one type. And like there's these units that really could use different keywords more so than points decreases. Um I do think more or less most of these points decreases are on the right units, and I do think Soulsworn did need to go up. Um, I don't know if 10 points makes a bit of difference though. Like, I also think that like I was saying earlier, I think Stormcast is like a very strong army. And is held down by basically new players are on it a lot, so the win rate's lower than it should be. This is one of those ones where I'm looking at this and I'm like, we could end up being in a Stormcast era for the next 3 months where like we're getting beat down by these guys that got too efficient. We'll see if that's the case. It might not. Kitten. Sorry,
I don't. I, I don't think so. Like your Grand Hammers and some of those key units that that the Stormcast have been doing really well with haven't dropped. Your Paladors haven't dropped. But what you are seeing is, Vanquishers now playing a similar role to Liberators and Vindictors at a similar price point. You're
Yeah.
seeing Krondus and Karazai dropping, even Ionis dropping down. The Drakespawn Templar is an awesome monster killer that is now really efficient at that point. I'm a big fan of Indrasa as well. And, being able to deep strike, 3d6 charge, go out and hunt some monsters. Like at 270, she's not a bad little pick. Unfortunately, your Desolators and your Fulminators are still probably too expensive. Like when you're getting 2 versus 3 Paladors.
Yeah, they're a little awkward. I mean, the Deathleader is getting pretty efficient, but I think some of the dragon builds got more interesting for sure in this, which is pretty
Yeah.
cool. I'm glad about that. Because every time I fought them, I was like, this feels like it's slightly lacking, but it's pretty close. And I think that we'll see, like the Karazai Krondus type stuff. I think it will, and the Drake Sworn will I think we'll see them succeed where they were like almost doing it before.
I just ran at a tournament. I ran Star Drake, Karazai, unit of Storm Drake Guard reinforced, and then I had did I have the idiot solo dragon hero? Anyway, I felt like I was one unit, just too little, and a unit of Liberators as well. But Stormcast, I think to your point as well, 48.8. I don't think again is a full representation. You got lots of 1 and 4s and a lot of 2 and 3s, and I don't think that's truly reflective of their strength. Much more about their popularity, as we've both kind of talked about. Sentinels of the Black Citadel, clearly the number one choice there. Legendary Tenacity, clearly the number one choice. Beacon of Azir, clearly a big choice as well. Mirror Shield still good. Quicksilver Draft still good. But some absolute clear winners here when it comes to Stormcast. So
they probably should have made like 20 points or so for like Tenacity and Beacon of Azir just to like increase some diversity. Like Vanguard Wing is great. Like some of these are great, but like there's just not enough units with the right keywords. And we were just talking earlier about like how they if they add some keywords changes here, I think the battle formations would see a lot more closer to fit to balance there. I don't think they're like power levels wrong. It's just not enough units to work with it. But yeah, I would have liked to see some small points increases on the heroic trait and artifact power there, just to increase diversity a bit.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, right? Like when you look at like the key units, right? It's that same combination of Vigilors with your Long Strike Raptors. You've got your Quest of Soul Sworn. You've got this little combination, whether it is like the shooting package, whether you've got the Grand Hammer package to do some real damage, and you've got various little pieces. It does feel like you're boxed into one particular build. So I would love to see more Reclusions. I'd love to see more of what's the Birdman idiot? What's his name?
There's so many. There's so many units in Starcast.
Yeah, but like I haven't seen a Prime in ages. I haven't seen Indrasa in ages.
Yeah, Prime. I was hoping.
Iridan. Iridan.
Yeah.
Oh, the Prime did go down. Prime went down. He's now 150.
Wait, is that the? Wasn't it the Lord
Prime.
Celestin, or am I mistaken? Maybe I misread it. I was hoping he did go down, but I may have misread it as. I thought it was
Prime. Sorry, Celestin Prime went down to 150.
Okay, well, dope. Like I for some reason thought it was the Lord Celestin. My brain just
no.
It's like the Fire Slayer problem where it's like it's not one guy. I'm glad he did because I think he's a cool unit. Although I wish he was just better instead. I kind of hope to see like an equivalent of like a soggy version of him to bring him back to the glory days, but.
Back to the days. And speaking of soggy, Sylvaneth has had one tweak, which is just the soggy Revenant. Again, we won't go too much into this because you've got a new battle tome and we're going to expect a lot of things to change. But I think what is going to be obvious is some of your key number one choices. I see Alariel coming back into all of her goddess gloriness. So she is hot.
Yeah, she's real good. I think basically everything's good in the book. Alariel's very good, but so is everything else. I think the book is actually pretty well balanced, surprisingly. It has like these crazy tools, but like it doesn't feel like it doesn't really do stuff like alpha you off the table, etc. So like you get to play a 5-turn game. It's got very low model counts most of the time. It's like high risk, high reward, very techy, but like I actually think it'll probably end up at a similar win rate to this, but a really good play experience for both players every time. I'm not worried about its power.
Yeah, Strike and Fade is going to make people are going to love the ability, and like, but then at the same time, I want to see people bringing on Tree Lords from a Tree Lord Ancient, and there's a lot of cool little pieces there. So I am looking forward to new Sylvaneth and seeing it in its glory. So we said that we were going to try to do this in 90 minutes. It's now almost 3 hours. So we've learned some lessons, but more importantly, our next video will definitely be faster because we won't have Battlescroll to be factoring in. Elias, want to bring us home? Any final comments you want to make that you haven't made into 2 hours and 45 minutes?
Just, I think this is going to be a really good 3 months. I think like all but 1 or 2 armies are looking in a pretty good spot. I think everyone's going to be having a better time for the next couple months as we finish out this GHB. I think like there's barely anything that I don't consider viable right now. And it's a good time to be playing, and it'll be fun. And I'm excited.
Make the most of the next couple of months because we probably do need a GHB in the next 3-ish months, right? So if you've got SOG stuff you really enjoy, final hurrah. If you play cities, final hurrah with some of those units that are looking forward to the next season. But let's wrap this up. My mouth's killing me. You probably need to go to bed or at least go see some cats. Hope you enjoyed this video, and we will be back again next month for the Meta Report. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for hanging around until the end. I hope you enjoyed that video and you walked away with a few new ideas. Now, if you did, I would love it if you pressed like on the video, as well as left me a comment with your thoughts. The conversation will continue over on Discord, and the link is down below in the episode description. I also want to give a massive shout out to the AoS Coach patrons and YouTube members who are supporting the channel and the growth that you're seeing here. So cheers, you are all bloody legends. And until next time, don't roll a 1-1 on a spellcast.